Chapter 922. Gu Beiyue had disappeared. Bai Yanqing's gaze turned cold. He turned around and went out the door, looking for him like a madman. Gu Beiyue was his biggest trump card. He was the only trump card he could use against Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi. If he couldn't instigate Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi, he could only rely on Gu Beiyue. Gu Beiyue had actually disappeared. Where was he? Soaring Dragon Valley was such a secluded place. It was almost cut off from the outside world. How did Gu Beiyue escape? Not only was Gu Beiyue heavily injured, he was also poisoned. How did he escape from the poisoned guards lying in ambush around him? Furthermore, why did he escape? Could it be that he had discovered something? Guards! Guards! Bai Yanqing stood in the courtyard and shouted. Unfortunately, there was no response. He was even more incredulous. He went out of the courtyard and searched everywhere. Very quickly, he found a pile of corpses in the bamboo forest behind the courtyard. They were all his poison guards. They were all killed in one stroke. Bai Yanqing was stunned. Gu Beiyue definitely didn't have the ability to kill so many poison guards. Therefore, someone must have snuck in and rescued him. Who could it be? How could they avoid the poison guards' poison? How did they find this place? Anger burned in his heart. Anger rushed to his chest. Bai Yanqing suddenly drew his sword and swung it, breaking a few bamboos. He had been tricked into Black Tower and escaped in a sorry state. He also found out that Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi didn't turn against each other. These two matters were enough to make him angry. He didn't expect that Gu Beiyue would also go missing. He had plotted for so many years. He had endured for so many years. Where did he go wrong? How did the result turn out like this? The Great War between Eastern and Western Qin should have started. He should have just sat back and watched everything. How could he be reduced to such a sorry state? After venting for a while, Bai Yanqing finally calmed down. He stabbed his sword into the ground and raised his head. His eyes were closed, and a trace of pain flashed across his wrinkled eyebrows. His failure was due to Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi. Why were they able to join hands? Moreover, they weren't working together in an ordinary way. From their intimate actions, anyone could tell that they still had feelings for each other. What right did they have to forget the responsibility on each other's shoulders? On what basis could they forget the enmity between their countries? Why? Why couldn't the woman he loved do it? Why did she still not believe him when he told her the truth, that there was only a misunderstanding between the East and Western Qin, and that someone had sowed discord between them? Why? Why could her daughter use the identity of Western Qin's princess to hook up with the East Qin crown prince? Why couldn't she accept him as a descendant of the Feng clan? Recalling the past, Bai Yanqing, who had originally calmed down, seemed to have gone mad. He swung his sword wildly and madly shouted that name, Mu Axian. Mu Axian, you betrayed me. It was you who betrayed me. Mu Axian, I will never forgive you, even if you die. I still won't forgive you. Mu Axian, open your eyes and look at your daughter. Mu Axian, tell me why. Why? Mu Axian, I actually lost to your daughter. When the entire bamboo forest was cut down, Bai Yanqing threw away his sword and his entire body fell backwards, heavily falling to the ground. Although his eyes were open, those sharp eyes seemed to have lost focus and were incomparably empty. Bai Yanqing was hidden in the soaring Dragon Valley, but Jun Yixia, who didn't know the truth, was still searching everywhere for his whereabouts. And at this time, Bai Yuqiao and the Black Tower poison guard Brother Qi had already sent Ning Qing and Su Xiaoyu to Northern Li's Heavenly River City. Bai Yuqiao asked Brother Qi to bring Su Xiaoyu to the military camp to find her senior brother first. She herself had something to say to Ning Qing. Ning Qing was wearing a hollowed-out mask that covered half of the right side of his face, covering his blind eye. This mask was made of silver and was very exquisite. It was half an open wing, a phoenix feather. Bai Yuqiao kidnapped Ning Qing all the way here and didn't restrict his freedom. However, Ning Qing simply couldn't leave because after Bai Yuqiao cured the poison in his eye, he gave him another strange poison. If he didn't take the antidote for a day, Ning Qing would feel as if his entire body was being burned until he died. Of course, being restricted by the poison wasn't the real reason why Ning Qing couldn't leave. Another reason why he kept following Bai Yuqiao was that Bai Yuqiao wanted to take him to see Jun Yixia. Bai Yuqiao said that Jun Yixia didn't know what Bai Yanqing had done in the past year. Bai Yuqiao was afraid that Jun Yixia wouldn't believe her words, so she asked Ning Qing to testify. She promised that as long as Ning Qing testified, she would immediately give Ning Qing the antidote. At this time, the two of them were sitting in a private room in a tea house in Heavenly River City, leaning against the railing. Ning Qing liked wine and wasn't used to drinking tea, so he hadn't touched it yet. Bai Yuqiao, on the other hand, was carefully tasting the tea, enjoying herself. When she saw Ning Qing looking out of the window, she secretly looked at Ning Qing's phoenix feather mask. That mask was personally drawn by Ning Qing and made her send someone to make it. Hey, the phoenix feather birthmark on Han Yunxi's back looks like this, right? Have you seen it before? Bai Yuqiao had been curious for a long time. Ning Qing didn't turn around, but his eyes darkened. When do you plan to take me to see Jun Yixia? He had to admit that the relationship between Bai Yanqing and Jun Yixia was beyond his expectations. If there was a gap between the master and disciple, it might be a great opportunity for the D clan. Ning Qing, you really like Han Yunxi. She even blinded you. What do you like about her? Bai Yuqiao asked curiously. Ning Chang's hand on the table slowly clenched into a fist. Bai Yuqiao used to be afraid of him, but now she wasn't. After all, Ning Qing was still restricted by her poison. She was sure that Ning Qing wouldn't go back to ask Han Yunxi to help him detoxify the poison, but it was too late to go back. Moreover, she was also sure that Ning Qing would be interested in cooperating with her senior brother. Bai Yuqiao glanced at the clenched fist and continued to smile. Don't tell me you're thinking about the position of Western Qin's imperial prince's son-in-law. Hehe, when Han Yunxi ascends the throne one day, you'll be the D clan's clan leader. Great General Ning would be a good match for her. Ning Qing. Before Bai Yuqiao could finish speaking, Ning Qing suddenly grabbed her collar. Bai Yuqiao's entire body fell onto the table, sweeping the tea set off the table. I'm warning you for the last time. Don't ever mention the 3 words Han Yunxi in front of me again. Otherwise, I'll let you know what it means to be truly blind. Ning Qing warned coldly. Ning Qing, if you don't let go of me now, I definitely won't give you the antidote today. Bai Yuqiao said angrily. Ning Qing snorted coldly. Hehe, this clan leader believes that Jun Yixia will be very willing to help me detoxify the poison. After he finished speaking, he shook off Bai Yuqiao and got up to leave. Bai Yuqiao quickly stopped him. Ning Qing, you don't understand the relationship between my senior brother and my master. Do you? Ning Qing asked in return. Of course. If you're willing to believe me, I can tell you everything. Bai Yuqiao quickly said. Ning Qing laughed loudly. Why should I believe you? Fulfill your promise from before. I'll definitely tell you the truth. Bai Yuqiao smiled. She had always been thinking about the sum of money that Ning Qing had promised her. She still hadn't gotten the rest of the money. If she got it, senior brother would definitely be pleasantly surprised. Ning Qing sneered. Nonsense. Bai Yuqiao was angry. Ning Cheng, I'm not even going to argue with you when you lied to me. Are you going to renege on your debt? Bai Yanqing was lured here by Han Yunxi, not you. You should thank the heavens that I didn't ask you to repay the debt. Ning Cheng really didn't want to waste his breath on this kind of little girl. Since they were already in Tianhe City, rather than wasting his breath on Bai Yuqiao, he might as well go find Jun Yixia. Helpless, Bai Yuqiao stopped him again. Fine, I don't want that sum of money. You can listen to my senior brother and my master's story first. It won't be too late to leave after that. Why are you telling me so much? Ning Cheng was really curious. Because I want my senior brother to get rid of my master and not be deceived again. Don't be fooled by my master like a fool, and still respect him like a father. Bai Yuqiao said seriously. Ning Cheng, as long as you can convince my senior brother to cooperate with you, you'll have a chance of winning whether it's against the Northern League Imperial family or against the Long Fei Yi. You should give up on Han Yunxi. Bai Yuqiao's eyes narrowed as she said seriously, you're working so hard to be loyal to her. Why don't you conquer the country yourself and make her submit? A woman like Han Yunxi would only like a man like Long Fei Yi. How could she like a slave like you? Ning Cheng slowly pulled away from Bai Yuqiao and gave Bai Yuqiao a meaningful look. I don't mind telling you that the reason my senior brother has always been under the control of the Northern Dynasty's emperors and didn't resist is because he has always been waiting for my master. Bai Yuqiao had been hiding all along the way, but when she arrived in Northernly, she asked around about the situation in Northernly. She had a thorough understanding of Jun Yixia's situation and the current situation in Northernly. She also guessed that Long Fei Yi and Ning Cheng had a lot of thoughts of sowing discord among the Northern Dynasty's emperors. She sneered. Ha, my senior brother can't command his troops. Long Fei Yi will definitely underestimate my senior brother's power in Northernly. Hearing this, Ning Cheng's eyes lit up. Bai Yuqiao's analysis was very correct. Long Fei Yi definitely wouldn't have thought of the wonderful relationship between Jun Yixia and Bai Yanqing. It seemed that Jun Yixia really couldn't command his troops and wasn't really under the control of the Northern Dynasty's emperors. Ning Cheng had been blinded in one eye. His left eye seemed to be even darker and more hidden. Regarding this matter, only he knew what his attitude towards Bai Yuqiao's persuasion was. Bai Yuqiao looked into Ning Cheng's eyes. She couldn't help but admit that even though this man was blind in one eye, he was still dignified, noble, and incomparably handsome. Family head Ning, please consider it carefully. Bai Yuqiao was very patient and also very confident. Ning Cheng sat down and lightly said, Speak. This family head is all ears. Bai Yuqiao spoke from a young age. For as long as she could remember, her senior brother had been at the 100 Poison sect. He treated his master like a father, respectful and obedient. The more Ning Cheng listened, the deeper his eyes became, as if he was calculating something. By the time Bai Yuqiao finished speaking, the sky had already darkened. Ning Cheng's complexion also began to turn ugly, the poison had flared up. Bai Yuqiao straightforwardly handed over the antidote. After Ning Cheng swallowed it, his complexion improved a little. Let's go. I'll take you to see my senior brother. Bai Yuqiao's excitement overflowed. He hadn't seen his senior brother for a long time and had missed him so much that he was about to go crazy. Ning Cheng stretched out a hand. Return Han Yunxi's golden needle to me and I'll go with you. The golden needle that Ning Cheng spoke of was the one that had pierced into his eye. Han Yunxi's golden needle was very special, so Bai Yuqiao had hidden it away. Bai Yuqiao was suspicious. However, Ning Cheng coldly said, this family head must keep it well and constantly remind you of the revenge of that needle. Chapter 923. Revenge of a Needle. Bai Yuqiao looked at the phoenix feather mask on Ning Cheng's face again, half believing and half doubting. However, she still straightforwardly handed over the golden needle to Ning Qing. In any case, she could not figure out how the needle was made and what mysteries it contained. Bai Yuqiao quickly brought Ning Qing to the military camp on the outskirts of Tianhe City. Because Brother Qi had already informed them, when they arrived at the entrance of the military camp, they saw Jun Yixia personally standing at the entrance to welcome them. Bai Yuqiao saw the familiar figure from afar and her heartbeat sped up. She unconsciously stopped and took a few more glances. In front of her senior brother, she might not dare to look at him like this. On the contrary, she only dared to show her admiration from afar. Ning Qing was not in the mood to pay attention to Bai Yuqiao's strange behavior. He looked at Jun Yixia and walked forward step by step. A meaningful sneer flashed past his eyes. He was now considered a prisoner. Since Jun Yixia personally came to the entrance to welcome him, it meant that Jun Yixia also had the intention to join forces with him. As long as Jun Yixia had the intention, everything would be easy to handle. When he got closer, he saw Jun Yixia in a fiery red riding outfit. He was handsome and valiant. These days in the military camp, he who had lived like a prince had lost a lot of weight and tanned a lot. His facial features were even more profound, as if they were carved by God. The blood-red eyebrow nail at the corner of his eyebrows hidden under his fine bangs looked like a trace of blood, but also like a cluster of flames, full of a mysterious aura. The wind suddenly rose, lifting his cloak and also his body. He was insufferably arrogant. Even if he personally came out of the camp to welcome Ning Qing, Jun Yixia's attitude was still high and mighty when he walked in front of him. If it were anyone else, they would have been intimidated by Jun Yixia's powerful aura. However, Ning Qing was different. Unlike Jun Yixia's noble attire, Ning Qing's simple black attire made him look a lot more down and out. However, when he raised his head, his cold and arrogant gaze was enough to look down on everything about Jun Yixia. The wind on the grassland blew harder and harder. The two tall and proud men stood face to face. Their eyes met, and the silent contest had already begun. Jun Yixia waited for Ning Qing to speak first. Ning Qing also waited for Jun Yixia to speak first. The two of them were silent, but their gazes were not quiet at all. They were scrutinizing each other, but neither of them moved. Fortunately, Bai Yuqiao quickly came over. Seeing this, she hurriedly mediated, "Senior brother, this is the D clan's patriarch and also the great general of the Ning army, Ning Qing." However, Jun Yixia did not say anything. Bai Yuqiao hurriedly said, "Great General Ning, this is my senior brother, Jun Yixia." Ning Qing also did not say anything. Bai Yuqiao was anxious and did not know what to do. Suddenly, Jun Yixia fiercely kicked at Ning Qing. Almost at the same time, Ning Qing also kicked out and blocked Jun Yixia's foot. The two of them were in a deadlock. Jun Yixia's eyes turned cold and he immediately used his strength. Ning Qing's martial arts were not as good as Jun Yixia's. He did not directly resist, but cleverly avoided. However, Jun Yixia did not let go. His body suddenly rose into the air and his feet kicked one in front and one back. Ning Qing repeatedly retreated, but was accidentally kicked to the ground by Jun Yixia. Even so, his gaze was still cold as he coldly scrutinized Jun Yixia. Ning Qing's gaze made Jun Yixia very uncomfortable. He had already kicked Ning Qing to the ground, but he did not stop. He strode forward and ruthlessly kicked at the mask on Ning Qing's face. Ning Qing used his right hand to grab Jun Yixia's foot and held on tightly. Jun Yixia could not break free, so he simply did not struggle. His other foot tapped on the ground and used the force to jump up, still kicking at Ning Qing's face. Ning Qing could clearly use his left hand to grab Jun Yixia's foot. As long as he grabbed it, Jun Xie's feet would be restricted and he would lose for sure. Jun Xie's arrogance was exposed, while Ning Cheng's arrogance was restrained. Ning Cheng could not win in martial arts, but he could win in strategy. However, even though the opportunity was right in front of him, Ning Cheng still did not win. His left hand was always by his side. His palm was pressed on the ground, and he did not even raise it. He concealed it so well that even Jun Xie mistakenly thought that he did not have time to make a move, and did not deliberately not make a move. Jun Xie's kick landed on Ning Cheng's phoenix feather mask. It did not break, but fell off. Ning Cheng's blind eye was exposed. His eyeball was fine, and the shape of his eye was still good. However, it was empty and lifeless, without focus. The eyes were the most difficult to fake. No matter how powerful an expert was, they could only fake both eyes and pretend to be blind. One eye was normal, and the other was blind. No one could fake it. Jun Xie carefully looked at Ning Cheng's blind eye. Only then did he believe that he was really blind. Han Yunxi is really ruthless. Jun Xie sneered as he reached out to Ning Cheng, wanting to pull him up. Ning Cheng did not even look at Jun Xie's hand. He picked up the phoenix feather mask, wiped it clean with his sleeve, and put it back on. Only then did he stand up and pat the dust off his body. He and Jun Xie were about the same height, but his back looked more arrogant and imposing than Jun Xie's. Jun Xie calmly withdrew his hand and sneered, "Phoenix feather." Han Yunxi's birthmark looks like this. The Nether clan has a map. They rely on phoenix feather to find people. As Ning Cheng spoke, he looked at Jun Xie. What, Bai Yanqing also knows about phoenix feather's existence? Didn't he tell you? You don't know that phoenix feather's birthmark looks like this. Bai Yuqiao became suspicious. She thought that she must be overthinking. How could Ning Cheng have seen Han Yunxi's birthmark? Jun Xie, who was originally arrogant, suddenly became gloomy. He turned to look at Bai Yuqiao. After Brother Qi brought Su Xiaoyu here, he told him everything that his master had been doing these days. However, he was not willing to believe it. Unless his master told him personally, unless his master admitted that he had been using him all this time, he would not believe it. Ning Cheng's question was undoubtedly because he knew about their relationship. It must have been Bai Yuqiao who told him. Bai Yuqiao had already guessed that her senior brother would have this kind of attitude, so she needed Ning Cheng's help. She lowered her head, not daring to meet Jun Xie's scrutinizing gaze. She hoped that Ning Cheng would quickly help her out. Ning Cheng sneered, "You were tricked by Bai Yanqing. You can only blame your own stupidity. Why, are you blaming a little girl? You have no right to interfere in my sect's affairs." Jun Xie was still cold as he stared at Bai Yuqiao. Ning Cheng leisurely patted the grass in his hand and sneered, "Bai Yuqiao, since your senior brother intends to continue being the Feng clan's lackey, why do you have to worry so much about him?" Ning Cheng finished speaking and turned to leave. If Jun Xie remained stubborn with Bai Yanqing, there would be no possibility of cooperation between him and Jun Xie. Bai Yuqiao was anxious. "Senior brother, master has hidden so many things from you. Why are you still so stubborn? When I was in the Winter Crow clan, how could master tell me everything?" Jun Xie retorted cold, "He has a sense of propriety. Could it be that he has to tell us everything?" Bai Yuqiao smiled bitterly, "Senior brother, master has long planned this. Do you still remember the bloodstains you brought back from Fishing Boat Island? That was Bailey Mingxiang's blood, the blood of the Mermaid clan. Master has been studying those bloodstains behind your back. It was from those bloodstains that master guessed Long Fei Ye's identity." Jun Xie's eyes darkened when he heard this. "Senior brother, do you know why master knows Han Yunxi's identity?" Because Han Yunshi is a direct descendant of the poison sect, and so is Master. I saw Master use the poison storage space with my own eyes. It can't be faked. Also, Helian Zuexiang of Tianning's Han estate was actually a spy that Master planted in the Han estate many years ago. 20 years ago, Master already knew Han Yunshi's identity and the whereabouts of the Western Qin princess. Why didn't Master tell you? After killing the Crown Prince and Second Prince, Master would help him deal with the Northern Dynasty's emperors. But Master went back on his word. Jun Yixia looked at Bai Yuqiao coldly again, but didn't reprimand him. Chapter 924. Hearing Bai Yuqiao's explanation, Ning Qing gave a cold laugh. Jun Yixia, you've really been played by Bai Yanqing. The Northern Dynasty's emperors are not fools. You killed the Crown Prince and Second Prince and controlled 100,000 war horses. How can Bai Yanqing convince the Northern Dynasty's emperors to believe you? This is simply a joke and you believe it. Jun Yixia's eyes flashed with displeasure as he retorted, even if Master can't convince the Northern Dynasty's emperors, the Northern Dynasty's emperors may not be able to restrict me. As long as I give the order, at least half of the Northernly cavalry will listen to me. What about the army's pay? Ning Qing asked back. These two words made Jun Yixia speechless and Bai Yuqiao suddenly understood. Thinking of the words she said to Ning Qing in the tea house, she felt ashamed. The situation in Northernly, her senior brother's current situation, Ning Qing saw it more clearly than her. Her senior brother could indeed rebel at any time, but her senior brother didn't have any pay. He could at most hold on for a month. After a month, it would be winter and there would be no more food. The horses would starve and the soldiers would flee. This was her senior brother's fatal flaw. Jun Yixia, Bai Yanqing should be very clear on how much food you have. So, for every day he doesn't come, you have to be in a deadlock with the Northern Dynasty's emperors. Bai Yanqing doesn't want to take you to conquer the world, he just wants to use you to hold back Northernly. He wants to let my Ning family army have no worries and use all our strength to fight to the death with East Qin. Ning Qing seriously said. Bai Yuqiao nodded repeatedly. Ning Chang's analysis was right. If Han Yunshi hadn't exposed Master's identity at that time, everything would have happened as Ning Qing said. Eastern and Western Qin were embroiled in a chaotic war, and Northernly was embroiled in civil strife. Even if Eastern and Western Qin suffered heavy losses, Jun Yixia and the Northern Dynasty's emperors would not be able to take advantage of the situation because they would also suffer heavy losses. Jun Yixia finally came to a realization. He muttered to himself, Master, he's helping you. Ning Qing nodded helplessly. In a sense, Bai Yanqing was indeed helping the D clan. Unfortunately, he had discovered it too late. Unfortunately, he had been frightened by Jun Yixia's 100,000 warhorses. If it wasn't for Bai Yuqiao's words reminding him, when he discovered the contradiction in Bai Yanqing's actions, he wouldn't have thought of this point. Why would Master help you? Jun Yixia couldn't accept this fact. However, Ning Qing knew in his heart that although Bai Yanqing seemed to be helping the D clan, he actually wanted the D clan to have no worries and go all out to fight East Qin. Bai Yanqing played a large game of chess. He schemed against Long Feiyi, Han Yunshi, and even him and Jun Yixia. There was only one goal, which was to have Eastern and Western Qin fight to the death with no chance of reconciliation. Han Yunshi's words once again echoed in Ning Chang's ears. Han Yunshi questioned him, didn't you say you would give everyone a chance to redeem themselves? You even used the red barbarian cannons, what is the meaning of this? That's right. Back then, Han Yunshi and Long Feiyi both suspected Bai Yanqing's intentions. They both suspected that the enmity between Eastern and Western Qin was a misunderstanding, but he just didn't believe it. He just didn't want to believe it. Now that he knew that Bai Yanqing was hiding things from Juni Xia, and Bai Yuqiao brought it up, he couldn't help but be suspicious. But he couldn't figure it out. If the Wind Clan was the one who instigated the civil war between Eastern and Western Qin, then what were they after? Were they after Cloud Realm Continent? Judging from Bai Yanqing's actions, he didn't care about Cloud Realm Continent at all. He just wanted to throw the continent into chaos. Ning Cheng was immersed in his own thoughts while Juni Xia laughed loudly. Ning Cheng, don't tell me my master is truly loyal to Western Qin. I'm telling you, that's impossible. It was obvious that Juni Xia hadn't realized Bai Yanqing's true motives. A complicated look flickered past Ning Cheng's eyes before he asked, Juni Xia, you've been his disciple for over 20 years. What do you think he wants to do? What did Master want to do? Master had always told him that the Wind Clan would help the Black Clan seize Northern Li's armored cavalry and take over Cloud Realm Continent. Just like how the Black Clan had instigated the civil war between Eastern and Western Qin, the Wind Clan was the Black Clan's best ally. But now he couldn't believe his own lies. Ning Cheng turned back and approached Juni Xia step by step. Tell me, what does he want to do? No matter what he wants to do, he'll never pledge loyalty to Western Qin. Never. Juni Xia was forced into a corner. Bai Yuqiao watched from the sidelines. He wanted to interrupt a few times, but held back in the end. Senior brother had never been forced into such a corner in his entire life. Master was probably the only thing that could truly hurt him. Bai Yuqiao steeled her heart and kept quiet. She only hoped that Ning Qing could be even more ruthless and force senior brother to wake up and scold him to his senses. But Bai Yuqiao was wrong. Ning Cheng's every word was meant to test Juni Xia. He couldn't see through Bai Yanqing, so he hoped to find some clues from Juni Xia's reactions. Juni Xia, you've been fooled by him like a fool. You've been fooled for over 20 years, why are you so sure he won't? Ning Qing gave a cold laugh. Juni Xia, are you pretending to be a fool or are you really a fool? Juni Xia suddenly grabbed Ning Cheng's collar. Ning Cheng, let me tell you, the Wind Clan has already betrayed the Western Qin royal family. Not now, but during the Great Qin Empire's civil war, the Wind Clan had already betrayed the Western Qin royal family. When these words were said, Ning Cheng was immediately stunned. The civil war between Western Qin and Eastern Qin was caused by the flooding of the Sha River. The Wind Clan had sent a letter saying that the East Qin Crown Prince wanted to protect the iron mine and destroy the dam, diverting the flood downstream. When the East Qin royal family sent the Black Clan to destroy the dam, the Western Qin royal family sent the Wind Clan's army to stop them. It was because of the Wind Clan's defeat that when the civil war began, the Western Qin royal family did not have the advantage and were destroyed in just a single year. That night at the border of the battlefield, Long Fei Yi had denied this story. Long Fei Yi denied protecting the iron mine. Long Fei Yi had said that the East Qin royal family had only sent the Black Clan to steal the iron mine and the Black Clan's army had been ambushed by the Wind Clan, causing the two armies to fight. If the Wind Clan had betrayed the Western Qin royal family in the past, could it be that the Wind Clan had given false information, slandering the East Qin royal family? Could it be that the Wind Clan had deliberately ambushed the Black Clan's army and caused the civil war? How could the Wind Clan betray the Western Qin royal family in the past? Ning Qing said in a shocked voice. Juni Xia gave a cold laugh. Ning Qing, the Wind and Black Clans have always been allies. The Great Qin Empire's civil war in the past was caused by the Sha River flood, caused by the conflict between the Wind and Black Clans. Think about it carefully. Did Ning Qing still think about it? Juni Xia's words confirmed his guess. East and Western Qin had really been instigated. Everything had been instigated by the Wind and Black clans. For so many years, so many people had been obsessed with the national enmity, not the national enmity between East and Western Qin. It was the Wind clan and Black clan. The ones who should bear the hatred were them. Ning Qing fell back several steps. How could he accept this fact? For so many years, the D clan's obsession and his obsession had all become a joke. Truly laughable. Ning Qing shook his head again and again. Zhu Nixia pressed forward step by step. Even if my master betrayed the Black clan, he would not be loyal to Western Qin. Ning Qing, you don't need to worry about my sect's internal affairs. I only ask you one thing, are you interested in cooperating with my Black clan? Black clan. Zhu Nixia was actually a descendant of the Black clan. Ning Qing was shocked. Bai Yuqiao was dumbfounded. However, after the shock, they quickly understood. Zhu Nixia was a descendant of the Black clan. Chapter 925. When Zhu Nixia got up, Ning Qing wanted to chase after him, but several guards hurried over to stop him. Ning Qing stared at Zhu Nixia, the anger in his eyes burning fiercely, as if it would never cease. Zhu Nixia's teeth were broken, and his face was bruised and swollen. He got up on his own. Bai Yuqiao ignored the pain on his body and rushed over to help him up, but was pushed away. Bai Yuqiao fell to the ground, but Zhu Nixia didn't even look at her. Perhaps, he didn't even notice that the person who came to help him was Bai Yuqiao, and only thought that it was a guard. Bai Yuqiao was in so much pain from Ning Qing's kick, and with this fall, he was in so much pain that he couldn't get up. Zhu Nixia wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and his lips curled into a cold and arrogant smile. If Ning Qing had come up with another reason to agree to cooperate with him, he would have been suspicious. However, he definitely wouldn't doubt Ning Qing's reason. Although the D clan was a merchant family, they were famous among the 7 noble families for their integrity. Even if the D clan was disappointed with Western Qin, they wouldn't cooperate with the Black clan and betray Western Qin. However, Ning Qing's love had turned into hatred, so it was better not to talk about it. Zhu Nixia licked the blood from the corner of his mouth, and once again sized up the phoenix feather mask on Ning Qing's face. The more he looked at it, the more meaningful it seemed. He chuckled and said, "You used the phoenix feather mask to block that blind eye, how interesting. How do you want to cooperate?" Ning Qing asked coldly. Zhu Nixia didn't answer immediately, and instead invited Ning Qing into the barracks. In the tent, Zhu Nixia casually sat down on the main seat and told Ning Qing directly, "Pay." Ning Qing's eyes flashed with contempt as he asked, "How much do you need?" "The Northern Dynasty's emperors cut off all of my rations. The 30,000 horses here need rations. In the following month, the second and third batches of horses will arrive, and they will all need money to feed them. Winter provisions are the most expensive." Zhu Nixia asked for money very straightforwardly, without blushing at all. "That's all." Ning Qing played dumb. "I still have 10,000 cavalrymen under my command." Zhu Nixia added. "That's it?" Ning Qing asked again. Zhu Nixia was about to nod when Ning Qing said coldly, "Zhu Nixia, you should know that our cooperation is not a business deal. Just tell me how much you want. This patriarch is not in the mood to haggle with you." Zhu Nixia rubbed his aching shoulder and laughed. "Good, that's straightforward enough. I want 1 billion. If it were anyone else, they would have been frightened by this number." But Ning Cheng's expression didn't change, and he didn't even frown. Coldly, he said, "Just 90,000 horses and 10,000 cavalrymen for the winter. All of the military supplies will be at most 20 million. Ning Cheng wasn't just a merchant, but also a general who led troops into battle. He was very clear about the situation in the army. So, Patriarch Ning only plans to cooperate with me for one winter. Jun Yixia raised an eyebrow and asked. I'm only calculating for one season. Ning Cheng lightly said. I want to raise more than 90,000 horses and 10,000 cavalrymen. Jun Yixia stood up and walked over to the map hanging on the wall. He pointed to several locations. The troops in these places are usually raised by me. Jun Yixia wanted money, but he also wanted to show off his military strength to Ning Cheng. Ning Cheng glanced at the map and memorized all the markings on it. From these markings, he could see the situation of the military strength in various regions of Northern Li. It seems that Bai Yuqiao didn't lie to him. Jun Yixia really did have the strength to fight against the Northern Dynasty's emperors. If he had enough provisions, then once he sent out his troops, Northern Li would definitely fall into chaos. Although the Northern Dynasty's emperors wouldn't be defeated, they wouldn't be able to gain any benefits from Jun Yixia. Even with these, I still don't need 1 billion. Ning Cheng calmly said. 1 billion, including the cost of the cooperation between the Black and D clans. In the future, whether it's dealing with the Long Fei Yi or conquering Western Zhou's Tianning, I won't ask you for a single cent. Jun Yixia seriously said. Ning Cheng smiled. I can give you 1 billion, but what can your Black clan give me? What do you want? Jun Yixia asked back. Ning Cheng coldly said 3 words, Han Yunshi. Jun Yixia's eyes flashed with a cold smile. He stood up and walked over. He patted Ning Cheng's shoulder and probed, Brother, why do you have to do this? You and I will rule Cloud Realm together in the future. What kind of woman can't we have? If you can't do it, then there's nothing to talk about. Ning Cheng was very decisive. Jun Yixia immediately raised his hand and let go of Ning Cheng's shoulder. Master Ning, if you want to snatch a woman, go snatch it yourself. I'm not interested. Ning Cheng's eyes flashed with a sinister glint. Coldly, he said, Give me 30,000 military horses and 10,000 cavalrymen. Although Ning Cheng repeatedly emphasized Han Yunshi, these words still aroused Jun Yixia's vigilance. Jun Yixia meaningfully sized him up, but didn't say anything. You can help my D-clan army fight against the Long Fei Yi. I can provide for all your horses and soldiers. I can also add another 100 million taels for you to recruit soldiers. This winter, you only need to throw Northern Li into chaos. When spring comes next year, you can lead your troops south and take control of the south. Jun Yixia still didn't say anything. He walked back to his seat and slowly sat down. If he gave Ning Cheng 30,000 military horses, Ning Cheng's military strength would increase greatly. In addition to the D clan's red barbarian cannons, the D clan would really be able to contend against the Long Fei Yi. Perhaps they would even have a chance of winning. He had 60,000 cavalrymen left behind. In addition to the various forces in Northern Li, it was enough to contend against the Northern Dynasty's emperor's military strength. When Ning Cheng and the Long Fei Yi were both heavily injured, he would be able to take care of the Northern Dynasty's emperors and reap the benefits from the south. However, if Ning Cheng regretted it, wouldn't he have cheated him of 30,000 war horses for nothing? In this kind of chaotic time, although 1 billion taels was a lot, he definitely couldn't buy so many war horses. Even if he made another trip to Winter Crow, he wouldn't be able to bring back so many war horses. What if Ning Cheng bid him back after obtaining the 30,000 war horses? Ning Cheng wasn't in a hurry. He let Jun Yixia think about it. He turned around with his hands behind his back and looked at the map on the wall. Jun Yixia looked at Ning Cheng's back and slowly narrowed his eyes. Because of his master's matter, he had been a bit impulsive. Now that he had calmed down, he thought about how he had easily told Ning Qing the secret of the Eastern and Western Qin Civil War. It seemed a bit inappropriate. If Ning Qing had continued to be loyal to Western Qin and no longer made an enemy of East Qin, then wouldn't everything he did today be smashing his own foot with a rock? The more Jun Yixia thought, the more complicated his eyes became. Ning Qing looked like he was paying attention to the map, but his eyes were always looking at Jun Yixia. He hesitated a bit before saying, "Jun Yixia, I've said it before. The world is yours and Han Yunshi is mine. When I defeat Long Fei Yi, I'll return the 30,000 war horses to you. It's not impossible. Women are like clothes. You may think about it today, but perhaps after this year, you won't like it anymore." Jun Yixia's words were very subtle, but Ning Qing was very direct. "My body is poison and I rely on Bai Yuqiao's antidote to survive. You cannot believe me, but at least believe in your junior sister's poison." Jun Yixia finally realized this point. With Ning Cheng's weakness in his hands, he wasn't afraid of Ning Qing biting back at him. It looks like I'll have to trouble clan head Ning to stay with my army," Jun Yixia smiled. In other words, he was going to put Ning Qing under house arrest. Han Yunshi was a detoxification expert. How could he set his mind at ease if she let Ning Qing go? If he put Ning Qing under house arrest by his side, he could indirectly steal Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's money through Ning Qing. He could even control the D clan for his own use. After dispelling his suspicions, Jun Yixia was too fond of such a profitable business deal. "Then I'll have to trouble you to take care of me," Ning Qing said mildly. "You're too polite," Jun Yixia smiled with satisfaction. Just like that, Ning Qing stayed at Jun Yixia's horse farm. Jun Yixia didn't seem to restrict Ning Qing, but he secretly sent many people to keep an eye on Ning Qing and keep an eye on Ning Cheng's every move. He didn't tell Ning Qing to arrange the soldiers' pay and provisions right away, but Ning Qing wasn't in a rush to do so either. He didn't go anywhere, but sat by the gates of the barracks in a daze all day. As for Bai Yanqing's matter, Jun Yixia didn't bring it up again. By nightfall, Jun Yixia had Ning Qing write a letter to the D clan to report his safety. Ning Qing naturally knew that Jun Yixia would read his letter, so he only wrote a few words. "Staying at Northern Li's horse farm for now. Everything is well." Who should he write this letter to? Ning Cheng's first thought was Han Yunshi. He had been missing for so many days, so the entire D clan must be looking for him. What about Han Yunshi? As he thought about this, his eye under the phoenix feather began to ache. What was Han Yunshi doing now? Was she still with Long Fei Yi? Was she still tracking Bai Yanqing? Ning Qing hesitated for a moment, then wrote "Old Qing" on the envelope. Jun Yixia had already seen what Ning Qing wrote in the letter. He took the letter without even looking at it, then asked with interest, "Old Qing? Who's that?" "A servant who has been with me for more than 10 years, Ning Qing said mildly. Jun Yixia casually handed the letter to an attendant beside him to send it out. "I heard that Myriad Merchant Hall hasn't been peaceful recently. There's been trouble at the gambling houses and auction houses," Jun Yixia probed. A complicated look flitted past Ning Cheng's eyes, but it quickly disappeared. He said disdainfully, "There's nothing my Myriad Merchant Hall can't handle in the three-way black market." Outsiders might not know, but Ning Qing was well aware. Ever since Cloud Realm Trade Consortium lost its medicinal ingredients business and the South Central region's market, it had suffered heavy losses over the past 2 years. It was all thanks to the gambling houses and auction houses that they could keep afloat. If both places were in trouble, Cloud Realm Trade Consortium wouldn't be able to hold on much longer. After all, the D clan and his subordinates, as well as the consortiums and profitable businesses, were all dependent on Myriad Merchant Hall. What had happened to the gambling houses and auction houses? Would the Council of Elders be able to hold on without him? Was that girl Ning Jing still in the black market? Ning Ching hid all his worries in his heart. Jun Yixia really didn't know the inner workings of Cloud Realm Trade Consortium, nor did he have much interest in the black market. In any case, he was certain that the D clan had plenty of silver. Rest and recuperate for a few days. We'll talk about the soldiers' pay another day, Jun Yixia said seriously. 1 billion was a huge sum. Was Ning Qing planning to pay it all at once, or how? How was Ning Qing going to pay for 30,000 battle horses? Should he tell the world about his cooperation with Ning Qing, or do it in secret? Everything still needed to be discussed in detail. As soon as Jun Yixia left Ning Cheng's place, Bai Yuqiao came looking for him. Senior brother, master's matter, enough. Jun Yixia cut him off coldly. Senior brother, don't tell me you're still. Jun Yixia abruptly turned around, his gaze fierce. It's none of your business to talk about the matters between me and master. So speaking, he stalked off. Bai Yuqiao felt her heart ache. At least she tried her best, she thought. At least senior brother knew the truth. After over 20 years of master and disciple love, how could they hate each other so easily? Of course, once they did, there would be no turning back. Jun Yixia wasn't stupid, but he needed time to hide and lick his wounds. Meanwhile, the commotion had died down and the conspiracy was settled. Ning Qing sat alone in the barracks, licking the wounds of the D clan and himself. The faith of 3 generations, the persistence of 100 years, and his perseverance had suddenly turned into a joke overnight. Chapter 926. The enmity between Eastern and Western Qin was nothing but a misunderstanding, a joke. If Han Yunxi knew about this, she would be very happy, right? How happy would she be? Would she be as happy as a little girl, screaming and jumping up and down? Ning Qing had never seen her like that. In fact, he had never seen her smile before. Thinking of this, he seemed to see that woman's confident and bright smile. How would Long Fei Yi react? Even if Ning Qing was unwilling to accept or believe it, he had to admit that Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi had won the bet this time. What else could he refuse to accept from Han Yunxi? She was the master, and he was the servant, she was the monarch, and he was the subject. She did not forget her important task and did not have an affair with the enemy. What right did he have to refuse to accept her? She chose Long Fei Yi, so what reason did he have to interfere? Ning Qing sat on the ground with his head bowed and his hands resting on his knees. In the darkness, the candlelight illuminated the strong contours of his face, causing his lips to curve up into a bitter smile. It was as if this was his fate, but there was nothing he could do. He did not believe that Eastern and Western Qin was just a misunderstanding. How could it be so coincidental that he was the first to know this secret? Ning Qing was immersed in his thoughts when Bai Yuqiao walked in. Have I talked to my senior brother? Bai Yuqiao asked. Ning Qing looked up at her and sneered in his heart. Bai Yuqiao would be a very useful chess piece. The truth was revealed, but it did not mean that the hatred of so many years would end. The civil war of the Great Qin Empire had caused countless deaths and countless sacrifices. This debt was real. Who would pay for this debt? Naturally, it would be the Black Clan and the Wind Clan. He could not do anything to Bai Yanqing, but he did not believe that he could not take down Jun Yixia. Ning Cheng's letter to Uncle Qing was on the way, and Uncle Cheng's situation was not good at all. Han Yunxi and her group had already completed the transaction of South Ju Garden and West Jade Garden. After paying the banknotes and receiving the title deeds, they returned to the three-way black market. Uncle Qing sat in Myriad Merchant Hall for a while, then found an excuse to slip away. He had previously made an agreement with Jia Dai that once the transaction was completed, he would go to the three-way black market's Jianfu Bank to get the money. But he had already waited at Fortune Bank for an hour, but he still didn't see Jia Dai's people coming over. Jia Dai had raised the price at the last minute without discussing it with him, and now he had not come to meet him. The more Uncle Ching thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. After sitting for a while longer, he made a prompt decision to rush to Myriad Merchant Hall's Thriving Heavens Bank. Half of the banknotes that Han Yunxi and First Elder paid to Jia Dai were issued by Thriving Heavens Bank, and could be exchanged for silver taels at any of Myriad Merchant Hall's banks. If he blocked the account number of those banknotes before Jia Dai cashed in the cash, those banknotes would become invalid, and Jia Dai would not be able to get the silver taels. However, when Uncle Ching arrived at Thriving Heavens Bank, he was informed that those banknotes had already been exchanged at other banks. Damn it! Uncle Ching pounded his fist on the counter, scaring the manager so much that he did not know what to do. Simply abominable. Uncle Ching was unable to restrain his anger, but very soon, he could not be bothered to be angry. Instead, it was replaced by panic. Without that sum of money, how was he going to help Deacon Jean repay his debt? The deadline that he had promised Deacon Jean was tonight. Uncle Ching gradually fell silent, his expression complicated. Seeing this, the manager cautiously leaned over and whispered, "Uncle Ching, these banknotes were issued by the Council of Elders, right? What kind of deal did First Elder make recently that required such a large sum of silver? How would the subordinates know that the Princess of Western Qin had already meddled in Myriad Merchant Hall's affairs? And how would the Council of Elders' expenses be known by the subordinates? In the bank, only the manager knew that Myriad Merchant Hall had paid out 700 million in banknotes this afternoon. Uncle Ching was immersed in his own thoughts and did not hear the manager's question at all. Right now, he only had two paths. One was to silence them before Deacon Jean found Han Yunxi and the Council of Elders. The other was, to flee. After Uncle Ching left Thriving Heavens Bank, he did not return to Myriad Merchant Hall. Instead, he called for several experts to accompany him and headed towards the three-way black market's most chaotic brothel. Although it was already late at night, Han Yunxi was still very, very busy. After returning from West Jade Garden, she discussed with the elders about reopening the casinos. South Jew Garden and West Jade Garden had many courtyards that could be used directly and did not need to be renovated. It would be fine as long as they moved everything from the casinos. Let's start tonight. Remember, this must be kept a secret. The casinos must be reopened within 10 days at the latest, Han Yunxi said seriously. Ever since she left Ning Jing's place, she had been on high alert, unwilling to relax for even a moment. Princess, please name the casinos, First Elder said respectfully. They had discussed and decided to name South Jew Garden, which was closest to three-way black market, as an ordinary casino. They would open it first, while West Jade Garden would use a membership system. They would spread the news first and wait for a while. Han Yunxi thought for a moment, then said, "Let's use the original name. In a few days, find some people to spread the news that the casinos are opened by the garden owner." First Elder clapped his hands in approval. Such misleading rumors would only make the casino's origins more and more mysterious. This would definitely do them more good than harm. Han Yunxi and the other elders finalized a few more details before the meeting ended. Han Yunxi was pushed by a maidservant and chatted with the elders all the way out of the meeting hall. "Your Highness, these 2 days have been hard on you. Your Highness, quickly go and rest. Leave the rest to us. Don't worry." Han Yunxi was about to ask about the situation at the auction hall when a servant ran over excitedly. "Your Highness, First Elder, the auction hall is open." "Really?" First Elder was overjoyed. All 3 main halls are open for business, and they are all big deals. The East Hall opened 2 orders in a row. The customer for the second order directly paid for it without borrowing money from Kangon Bank, the servant said excitedly. First Elder was so happy that he didn't know what to say. His tired, bloodshot eyes were wet with tears. He had been under the most pressure over the past few days. Cloud Realm Trade Consortium, the army, and the various D-clan factions scattered across Cloud Realm continent had all sent letters to ask about Myriad Merchant Hall's situation. Today, he tossed out 700 million to buy 2 gardens. Although he looked calm, his heart was still trembling. He was afraid that the D-clan's centuries-old foundation would crumble in his hands. Fortunately, the crisis at the auction hall had been resolved. Now, Myriad Merchant Hall didn't have to worry about risks anymore. They could afford to gamble. The elders exchanged looks, their joy evident in their words. In the end, they all looked towards Han Yunxi, unsure of how to express their gratitude. Han Yunxi silently exhaled in relief. She was happy too. Smiling, she said, "Everyone, rest early. Get a good night's sleep." She knew how much pressure these 5 elders had to bear. Presumably, they would be able to sleep peacefully tonight. Everyone laughed at Han Yunxi's words. "That's right, have you found those troublemakers from the gambling houses?" Han Yunxi asked. "We're still investigating. We'll report as soon as there's any news," the head elder replied hastily. Han Yunxi nodded and dismissed everyone. She was going to have a servant girl push her over to Ning Jing's room for a look, but she suddenly remembered someone else and didn't go over. She'd only been gone for 2 days. Why did it feel so long after spending a night outside? Why did it feel like she hadn't seen the Long Fei Yi for 3 years? Was that guy already waiting for him in her room? Han Yunxi's ears still burned when she thought back to everything that had happened that night. She'd vowed many times to torment the Long Fei Yi, but when she did, she felt like she didn't have enough power to control him. In the end, he still managed to eat her alive. Han Yunxi quickly returned to her room. As usual, she dismissed all the servant girls inside and outside the room. She sat in the wheelchair and looked around the room. The room was empty, and she didn't see that familiar figure. Where was he? She hadn't seen him for the past few times, but he had appeared out of nowhere. Where was he hiding? Han Yunxi's lips curved into a smile as she steeled her heart to find Long Fei. However, just as she was about to look for him, a servant girl came over. "Your Highness, the head elder wants to see you. He said he has something to disturb you about." It was really disturbing to find her room so late at night. Han Yunxi deliberately didn't answer. She waited for the Long Fei Yi to come out and ask her to reject him. However, after waiting for a while, the room was still quiet. Long Fei Yi didn't come. If he was here, with his domineering personality, he would have come out to glare at her and ask her to reject the head elder. Han Yunxi's excited mood seemed to have been splashed with cold water. She suddenly felt down. She said to the servant girl indifferently, "Ask the head elder to wait in the side hall. I'll go over now." Before she left, she turned back to look at the room again. Finally, she left in disappointment. Once she reached the side hall, the head elder strode forward before Han Yunxi could say anything. He knelt down and respectfully presented a token with both hands. The token was made of gold-threaded cedar wood. It was in the shape of a key and tied with a gold-threaded satin. The word D was engraved on the token. Han Yunxi had been looking forward to this token for a long time. She didn't pretend to be shocked, nor did she hypocritically refuse. Instead, she kept silent. "Your Highness, Master Ning is not here. Please preside over the situation for the D clan," the head elder said seriously. "Preside over the situation for the D clan." Han Yunshi looked pensive. Just as she was about to probe further, the head elder immediately changed his words. Myriad Merchant Hall will obey the princess's orders. Han Yunshi picked up the token and smiled faintly. Head elder, aren't you afraid that Long Fei Yi and I will still be together and waste all the D clan's money? The head elder smiled embarrassedly. If the princess really wants to, who can stop you? Han Yunshi suddenly thought of Ning Qing. He was young and wasn't as open-minded as the head elder, who was old. That's right. If she wanted to, who could stop her from betraying the heavy responsibility of Western Qin? Why did she have to work so hard to resolve these crises for Myriad Merchant Hall? Why did she have to fight so hard for just an above-board position? Han Yunshi returned the elder token to the head elder. If the elder council trusts me, just promise me one thing. Ning Qing isn't here, so Myriad Merchant Hall's affairs will still be handled by you and the other elders. I'm just offering a few suggestions. The head elder was very surprised. To put it bluntly, this token was free silver and free authority. With this token in hand, who in the D clan would dare look down on her? Who would dare question her? She didn't want it. What is it, Your Highness? Please instruct me, the head elder said seriously. Elder, please use the name of Myriad Merchant Hall's Elder Council to inform Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's Elder Council, the generals, and deputy generals of the Ning clan army that Western Qin will join forces with East Qin to capture Bai Yanqing and rescue Gu Beiyue. Before Han Yunshi could finish, the head elder's expression changed. He exclaimed, the princess wants to work with East Qin. Seeing that the first elder was a bit shaken, Han Yunshi continued with a strong medicine. She revealed a self-deprecating smile. First elder, why is the difference between a princess and a crown prince so big? Long Fei Yi wants to cooperate with Western Qin, it only takes a single sentence. I, the Western Qin princess. Seeing the first elder's nervous appearance, Han Yunshi fiercely said, I, the Western Qin princess, am at best a puppet. Forget it, I should go back and properly recover. The matter of recovering the country, wait for your master Ning to come back and make a decision. I won't blindly meddle. After Han Yunshi finished speaking, the first elder broke out in a cold sweat. Han Yunshi was clearly questioning the D clan's loyalty and mocking the D clan's hypocrisy. First elder, it's this late and you should go back. Properly take your elder token. Han Yunshi said this as she turned the wheel to leave. She even said to herself, it's a good thing I know my place and didn't take any elder token. Her voice was not loud, but it was just enough for the first elder to hear. How could the first elder withstand Han Yunshi's self-deprecation? She was mocking the Council of Elders and the D clan with her self-deprecation. She was warning the first elder that if he didn't agree, she wouldn't care and would become a puppet. When the maid sent Han Yunshi to the door, the first elder couldn't help saying, Princess, if you think it's appropriate, this subordinate will do as you say. The first elder thought that if the princess didn't forget the heavy responsibility on her shoulders, Western Qin would cooperate with East Qin, so what? It was necessary to distinguish the truth of the civil war in the past and let the people of the world come to a conclusion. Not to mention that this cooperation was not Western Qin begging the Long Fei Yi, but rather the Long Fei Yi begging their princess for help and needed the princess' poison skills. The first elder comforted himself. Although his heart didn't feel good, he still compromised in the end. All right, I'll send the news tomorrow. I asked the companies and the military to wait for our good news. Han Yunshi honestly said. She had her back to the first elder and her lips couldn't help curling into a happy smile. She had finally done it. She didn't need to be sneaky anymore and she could use the name of Western Qin's princess to openly cooperate with the East Qin crown prince, Long Fei Yi. No matter what, she didn't need to hide anymore and she didn't need to hesitate anymore. She was filled with hope that the conflict between Eastern and Western Qin was just a misunderstanding. If it really was just national enmity and there was no misunderstanding, she was prepared to fight. They had agreed that whether they fought or not, they would live on. Because after taking off the heavy responsibility on her shoulders, they still had to be themselves and love each other. She still had to give birth to a dozen babies for Long Fei Yi. She was filled with hope and prepared. Would Long Fei Yi be the same? After the first elder left, Han Yunqi dismissed the maid. She couldn't wait to share this good news with Long Fei Yi. Before the 10-day agreement was up, she had already done it. However, after she entered the room, she remembered that Long Fei Yi hadn't come tonight. Su Donglin had always known her whereabouts. Could it be that Su Donglin didn't tell him that she was already back? Han Yunqi sat in the room for a long time. She almost called Su Donglin, who was guarding outside, to ask him, but she gave up in the end. It was impossible for Su Donglin not to report her whereabouts to Long Fei Yi. There was only one possibility, and that was that he was busy. Looking at the empty room, Han Yunqi was so tired that she didn't want to do anything. She just laid on the table and stared at the teacup in a daze. Although she had accepted the fact that Long Fei Yi hadn't come, she was still secretly waiting in her heart. There was still a bit of hope and she firmly believed that he would come. However, no matter how long she waited, the room was still silent. Finally, she pressed both hands on the table, stood up carefully, and tried to walk forward. Sure enough, when she took the first step, Long Fei Yi's unhappy voice came from behind her. He said, "Han Yunqi, try taking another step forward." She knew it. She knew that he would be here. Sure enough, she had found out. "What are you going to do if I take another step forward?" Han Yunqi said jokingly. Just as she was about to turn around, Long Fei Yi beat her to it. He strode forward and suddenly wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, hugging her. Han Yunqi also stopped moving. A soundless smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. It was as sweet as honey and bright enough to illuminate the dark, cold night. She said, "Long Fei Yi, hug me a little tighter, okay? I've missed you." Long Fei Yi moved closer and pulled her into his embrace. They stuck close to each other and felt each other's existence. "Is that enough?" Long Fei Yi asked. "A little tighter," Han Yunqi said gently. However, the two of them really couldn't get any closer. If they got any closer, he would have to knead her into his flesh and blood. He didn't say anything else. He just hugged her and buried his head in her shoulder. Silently, he kissed her jade neck and ears. He was unruffled and greedy. Occasionally, he would deeply inhale the unique fragrance on her body. It was a scent that belonged exclusively to him. 1 day apart felt like 3 years. What about 2 days apart? He couldn't imagine what he would do if he was separated from this woman for a few more days. He had arrived a long time ago and was staring at her to see if she remembered to change her dressing. Sure enough, he caught her again. As Long Fei Yi's kisses became heavier and heavier, and as his arms got closer and closer, Han Yunqi couldn't help but raise her head and close her eyes to feel his gentleness and passion. Even if he was unruffled, he still remembered her injury. He didn't let her stand for too long. Instead, he carried her to the bed and helped her change her dressing. Long Fei Yi, Han Yunqi wanted to say something, but hesitated. She just smiled at him. "You've taken down Myriad Merchant Hole?" Long Fei Yi asked in return. He knew about Great Elder's arrival and had been watching. "Aren't you happy?" Han Yunqi asked in return. Only then did Long Fei Yi rub her nose. "I'll take you with me tomorrow." We'll go to 100 Poison Sect. I've already made the arrangements. His happiness was well expressed on his face, and he directly put it into action. 100 Poison Sect. Han Yunshi was rather surprised. Surround and attack 100 Poison Sect. Send the poison guards and mercenaries from the City of Daughters over tomorrow. If Bai Yanqing doesn't come out, we'll raise 100 Poison Sect to the ground. Long Fei said. All right. Han Yunshi really hadn't thought about 100 Poison Sect before. That was Bai Yanqing's old nest. They had already provoked Bai Yanqing to the doorstep of his old nest. If Bai Yanqing still acted like a coward, then not only would he be removed from the world, he would also be laughed at by the people in the poison world. He would also be looked down upon by his subordinates. With Bai Yanqing's personality, he definitely wouldn't be able to tolerate this kind of humiliation. Moreover, he was wary of her joining forces with Long Fei. Therefore, Bai Yanqing only had one path to take, and that was to bring Gu Beiyue to 100 Poison Sect to restrain them. Long Fei's move was simply amazing. It was enough to force Bai Yanqing into a corner. Han Yunshi cupped Long Fei's face in her hands and said seriously, "You're still the smart one." Long Fei didn't like being close to others since he was young. Even his mother had never cupped his face like this. However, he didn't feel the slightest bit repulsed by Han Yunshi. He allowed her to hold his face. He didn't even mind when she playfully pinched his nose. He focused on applying medicine and bandaging her wound. After treating her wound, Long Fei took out a gold card. 700 million is here. Keep it well. I don't want your money. Han Yunshi said seriously. This was the money to scam Myriad Merchant Hall. However, in a sense, it wasn't a scam. It was just a fee paid by Myriad Merchant Hall to Kangon Bank. If she hadn't come forward, no matter how profitable it was, no matter how much shopkeeper Luo appreciated her proposal, Kangon Bank would never have cooperated with Myriad Merchant Hall. When Myriad Merchant Hall was in trouble, it was already good enough that Kangon Bank didn't kick them when they were down. Therefore, Myriad Merchant Hall owed Long Fei a favor. 700 million to repay Long Fei a favor was truly not a lot. Han Yunshi analyzed the situation for Long Fei, but Long Fei wasn't interested. He asked, "If you don't want money, do you want people?" Why did these words sound so familiar? She seemed to have said them the other night. Long Fei leaned lazily against the high pillow and raised his brows to size up Han Yunshi. Chapter 928. Long Fei's gaze wasn't meaningful at all, it was malicious. Han Yunshi avoided his gaze and coughed lightly, trying to find a topic to talk about. "Oh right, remember to remind me to get Tang Li out tomorrow." Now that she had a real say in Myriad Merchant Hall, as long as Tang Li was willing to cooperate with her, it would be easy for her to get the Elders Guild to release him. Other matters could be delayed, but Ning Jing's matter couldn't be delayed. If Ning Jing knew about Tang Li's feelings for her, how would she react? Han Yunshi couldn't help but imagine their future. Long Fei appeared to be disinterested in this topic. He answered lazily, Long Fei had no intention of continuing the conversation, so Han Yunshi could only continue to find a topic to talk about. The child was a knot in Long Fei's heart. She wouldn't be so foolish as to continue mentioning Tang Li and Ning Jing. She thought for a moment, then said seriously, "Oh right, I still have to inform Great Elder about Uncle Chang's matter tomorrow. If Uncle Chang doesn't get the money in these 2 days, he'll definitely show his true colors." Han Yunshi didn't rush to settle the score with Uncle Chang because she was waiting for Uncle Chang to lose his cool and find trouble with Jia Dai. No matter what, Uncle Chang was still a senior figure in the D clan. Instead of wasting her efforts to find evidence to bring him down, she might as well let him take the bait and expose himself. Long Fei-yi was still disinterested and nodded dispiritedly. Han Yunqi changed the topic again. Long Fei-yi, there's still no news from Gu. Could he? Before she could finish, Long Fei-yi interrupted her forcefully. Han Yunqi, I don't like you mentioning other people's names on the bed, especially Gu. Han Yunqi really wanted to tell him not to talk to her on the bed next time. Unfortunately, she didn't have the chance to say it. Long Fei-yi quickly used his actions to tell her that she could only call him by his name on the bed. Long Fei-yi, you bastard. Long Fei-yi, no, not here. Long Fei-yi, that's enough. That's enough. Long Fei-yi, you, don't. These screams were ecstatic. However, Long Fei-yi was only tickling Han Yunqi. Although Han Yunqi's legs had recovered quite a bit, it was still inconvenient. Moreover, she couldn't resist the strength of Long Fei-yi's hands. Not long after, she lay under Long Fei-yi and raised her hands in surrender. I was wrong, please forgive me. Judging from her tone, she didn't sound like she was admitting her mistake and surrendering. It was obvious that she had no choice. Long Fei-yi was expressionless as he looked down at her. Beg me. Han Yunqi had a lot of backbone. She turned her head away with a snort. Long Fei-yi narrowed his eyes and licked the corner of his lips as he stared at Han Yunqi. Han Yunqi could feel the dangerous aura, but she refused to comply. She could feel his hot breath getting closer and closer. She knew that he was leaning close to her, so she simply closed her eyes. Seeing this, the desire to conquer in Long Fei-yi's eyes intensified. Suddenly, he pressed down on Han Yunqi's arm with one hand and used the other hand to attack her armpit. Han Yunqi was so frightened that she had goosebumps all over her body. She was most afraid of Long Fei-yi scratching her armpit. Long Fei-yi's hand only wandered around and didn't really scratch her. Han Yunqi was already glaring at him. Let go, you're bullying me. It would have been better if she didn't say anything. The more dissatisfied she was, the more excited he became and suddenly scratched her. Ah, Han Yunqi screamed. Her voice was really too miserable to hear. Su Donglin, who was guarding outside the courtyard, couldn't help but sigh. Fortunately, the maids had retreated, otherwise the consequences would be unimaginable. Even if absence makes the heart grow fonder, there was no need to be like this. Did His Highness have to torture the princess to this extent? Are you begging or not? Long Fei-yi asked again. Han Yunqi was scratched until tears came out of her eyes. Her watery eyes were filled with stubbornness, making her look even more lovely and moving. I'm not begging, even if I die, I won't beg. Very good. Long Fei-yi had never been so competitive with a woman before. Han Yunqi was the first and only one. He had once attacked her, but this time, he didn't just tickle her once. Once he started, he didn't stop. Let go. Ah. Long Fei-yi, let go. Haha, that's enough. Let go of me, I'm going to get angry. Long Fei-yi, you're too hateful. Let go, you're bullying me. Woo-woo. Long Fei-yi, I'm going to cry. Han Yunqi seemed to have gone crazy. She laughed, cried, shouted, and screamed. She wasn't even willing to say the word beg. She struggled hard with both hands and twisted her body to avoid him. She didn't know if Long Fei-yi was soft-hearted or if he was careless, but she actually managed to break free of her hands. He only stopped when she hurriedly pulled on his hands. The two of them looked at each other. Han Yunqi was panting while Long Fei-yi was calm and patient. Even if she managed to break free, it would be easy for him to restrain her again. He didn't make a move immediately and waited for her to speak. Han Yunxi glared at him and gritted her teeth. She seemed to be hesitating. Seeing this, Long Fei-yi became even more patient and waited. As expected, Han Yunxi opened her mouth. Long Fei-yi, yeah. He couldn't help but laugh. Unexpectedly, she changed the topic and said, "Why don't you beg me?" Just like the previous time, she suddenly wrapped her arms around his neck and pressed him against her chest. She caressed his face, neck, and back gently and gradually helped him undress. At first, he didn't move and just buried his head in her body. But gradually, he didn't want to be outdone. He didn't even need to look at her and easily removed her clothes. The word beg had already been thrown to the back of his mind. He closed his eyes and kissed her gently. He easily fell into her beauty. However, he soon touched that scar and sobered up immediately. He looked up and saw that there was a deep bite mark on Han Yunxi's chest. What's going on? His face immediately darkened. Before Han Yunxi could answer, he pressed her down and said angrily, "Han Yunxi, what exactly happened?" He had bitten her here and left a bite mark, but it wasn't deep at all. It definitely wouldn't leave a scar. How did this scar come about? Seeing Long Fei-ye's violent and overflowing anger, Han Yunxi then realized that this guy might have misunderstood. How did this scar come about? Who else could it be other than him? Who else could it be? Han Yunxi couldn't help but laugh. "I asked Mu Linger for some medicine so that you'll be punished for the crime of bullying a disabled person like me." Long Fei-ye's ashen face finally calmed down a little. He was about to lose to this woman. She had stirred up his 7 emotions and 6 desires and even controlled his happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy. So much so that a misunderstanding could destroy his usually hard heart. He gently caressed the scar and looked at it seriously. He said gently, "Han Yunxi, I admit to this crime." Han Yunxi smiled. "All right, seeing that you have a good attitude when admitting to your crime, I'll lighten the punishment. I'll punish you." Han Yunxi's voice also unconsciously softened. "Long Fei-yi, I'll punish you, to love me forever. Do you accept?" "I accept." The scar on Long Fei-ye's hand was so similar to Han Yunxi's, as if they were a match made in heaven. He was lost in his thoughts when Han Yunxi hugged him and pulled him down. She whispered in his ear, submitting herself to him. "Long Fei-yi, I beg you. Love me." The night was silent, the moon was hazy, the land of tenderness, the drunken hibiscus, nothing was known. The next morning, when Long Fei-yi woke up, Han Yunxi was still asleep. He didn't leave cautiously like before, but woke Han Yunxi up. "I'll wait for you at the entrance of the black market in the afternoon," Long Fei-yi said seriously. Although he couldn't wait to take her away from the 3-way black market, Long Fei-yi still gave Han Yunxi enough time to deal with myriad merchant hall's troublesome matters. Han Yunxi immediately woke up. After Long Fei-yi left, she ordered the servant girls to tidy up and immediately rushed to the prison. She could finally rescue Tang Li, the sect head Tang. Tang Li hadn't seen Han Yunxi for 2 days. The moment he saw her, he almost knelt down. "Sister-in-law, why are you only here now? How's Ning Jing these few days? Is she better? Is she still taking medicine? Does she still feel uncomfortable? Does she vomit? Is it swollen? Can she sleep at night? How about during the day? Does she feel sleepy during the day?" Under Han Yunxi's incredulous gaze, he asked a bunch of questions. In the end, he even asked, "Is my daughter obedient?" Tang Li had completely refreshed Han Yunxi's understanding of him. "You know a lot." Han Yunxi said very seriously. "How is she?" Tang Li was burning with anxiety. "How do you know she's pregnant with a daughter?" Han Yunshi asked again. Tang Li didn't answer, nor did he ask Han Yunshi. He simply begged her. Sister-in-law, can you think of a way for me to see her? Just once. I'll sneak out and come back. It'll only take a while. No one will find out. Han Yunshi shook her head. Sorry, I can't do that. Tang Li was furious. I want to see my brother. He didn't have the ability to escape, but his brother definitely had the ability to get him out. Even if it exposed the relationship between the Tang sect and the East Qin imperial family, he wouldn't hesitate. In any case, he didn't expect to get any benefits from Ning Jing, nor did he want to make things difficult for Ning Jing to trick the D clan. He only had one thought now, and that was to take Ning Jing home and take care of the baby. He was going to be a father. Looking at the nearly crazy Tang Li, Han Yunshi couldn't help but wonder how Long Fei Yi would react if she got pregnant one day. Sister-in-law. Tang Li begged. He was just short of kidnapping Han Yunshi to threaten those archers. Your brother won't help you either. If you want to get out, you just have to agree to one of my conditions. Han Yunshi smiled. Tang Li immediately shut his mouth and waited for Han Yunshi to continue. Han Yunshi lowered her voice and whispered into his ear. Only then did Tang Li know what Han Yunshi had been doing at Myriad Merchant Hall these days. So they'll listen to you? Tang Li asked seriously. They'll listen to me for such a big matter, let alone a small matter like yours, Han Yunshi said with a smile. This isn't a small matter. Tang Li looked aggrieved. Han Yunshi had lost to him. Okay. This is also a big matter. I'll go find the Great Elder now. Go. Tang Li's attitude was no different from chasing someone away. Han Yunshi realized for the first time that this was the joy of being a father. Seeing Tang Li so happy made her feel great. After Han Yunshi left the prison cell, she went to find the Great Elder, but... Chapter 929. Before Han Yunshi reached the Council of Elders, a maidservant in green came looking for her. Princess. Something bad has happened. The maidservant in green was extremely pale. This maidservant in green had been bribed by Han Yunshi to serve Ning Jing in her courtyard. Han Yunshi's heart grew flustered. If anything happened to Ning Jing and her daughter, how was she going to explain it to Tang Li? What happened? Han Yunshi asked. Miss Jing and Miss Mu Ling have disappeared. Qian, who was serving them in the room, has been killed. The maidservant in green was so frightened that her lips and teeth were still trembling. I was just about to bring in the food when I saw Qian lying on the ground. There was no one on the bed. I immediately went to look for Miss Ling but Miss Ling was also not in the side room. Han Yunshi thought that the worst-case scenario was that something had happened to Ning Jing's body, but she never expected things to be this bad. Ning Jing needed to be bedridden. Could she still hold on after being kidnapped? The maidservant had been killed, and Ning Jing and Mu Ling had disappeared. This was clearly a kidnapping. Han Yunshi's hands were cold, but she still calmed down and instructed, go and inform the Council of Elders immediately. Also, don't divulge anything about Ning Jing. Otherwise, be careful of your life. Han Yunshi had the maidservant quickly push her to Ning Jing's courtyard to inspect the scene. To be able to kill people and kidnap people in Myriad Merchant Hall without a sound, it was definitely not simple. It was either an expert or a mole. When Han Yunshi rushed over, First Elder and the others had just arrived. When they saw the corpse in the room, everyone looked at each other in dismay. Fifth Elder was about to examine the corpse when Han Yunshi stopped him. Don't touch it. Someone, go and find a coroner. First Elder understood Han Yunshi's meaning. Han Yunxi knew a little about forensic science, but it was safer to leave unprofessional things to a coroner. While they were waiting for the coroner, Han Yunxi took the initiative to ask the maidservant about the situation in the courtyard since yesterday. Under the reminder of Han Yunxi's eyes again and again, the flustered maidservant finally didn't spill the beans about Ning Jing's pregnancy. According to the clues provided by the maidservant, Ning Jing and Mu Linger were still there last night. It was very likely that they were kidnapped between night and dawn. Mu Linger was responsible for preparing medicine for Ning Jing and lived in the side room. Ning Jing was recuperating in the master bedroom. The maid who was killed was the maid who kept watch at night. Soon, the coroner arrived. After a thorough examination, he confirmed that the maidservant had been killed in the middle of the night. She was killed with a single stab, and there were no signs of struggle before she died. It must be a mole. Han Yunxi said seriously. There were many guards on night patrol in Myriad Merchant Hall, and Ning Jing's courtyard was also surrounded by guards who specialized in night patrol. If it wasn't a mole who was familiar with this place, how could they silently sneak in to kill and take away Ning Jing and Mu Linger without anyone noticing? There can't be a mole in Myriad Merchant Hall. Second elder said angrily. Even if there is a mole, what's the point of kidnapping Miss Jing? Although third elder wasn't as agitated as second elder, he agreed with this point of view. Your Highness, Miss Jing hasn't been in charge for a long time. Now that she's sick, if there's a mole, they should know that kidnapping her won't be a threat to the D clan. Could it be someone from the Tang sect? First elder asked suspiciously. Han Yunxi countered, if it was someone from the Tang sect, why did they only kidnap Ning Jing? Why didn't they rescue Tang Li? Second elder said righteously, they probably didn't find Tang Li. Han Yunxi couldn't help but roll her eyes. She actually hoped that it was the Tang sect who kidnapped them. Then everything would be easier. But how could it be the Tang sect who kidnapped them? Those elders of the Tang sect still didn't know that Tang Li was imprisoned in Myriad Merchant Hall. They only thought that Tang Li had brought Ning Jing to East Origin Hall to play. Moreover, even if they wanted to take action, they wouldn't be so bold as to hide it from Long Fei Yi. Second elder, aren't you overestimating the Tang sect too much? Could it be that Myriad Merchant Hall's defenses are so weak that the Tang sect can kill and kidnap people without anyone noticing? Han Yunxi said mockingly. Second elder immediately shut his mouth. Third elder said, Your Highness, if there is a mole, who is it? Why did they kidnap Miss Jing? Han Yunxi was shocked when she heard this. She blurted out, Uncle Cheng. Uncle Cheng. How was that possible? Everyone was confused. Han Yunxi anxiously asked, First elder, where is Uncle Cheng? Your Highness, even if there is a mole, it can't be Uncle Cheng. When we returned yesterday, Uncle Cheng left halfway. He went to the south to hire a new dealer, First elder reminded her. Han Yunxi shook her head. She silently cursed herself for being too careless. She had underestimated Uncle Cheng too much. In her panic, Han Yunxi almost blurted out Jia Dai's story. Fortunately, she stopped herself in time. She couldn't explain it clearly. If she could, she would have done so long ago. She couldn't tell the Council of Elders that she and Jia Dai knew each other, and that they had colluded to harm Uncle Cheng and Myriad Merchant Hall, could she? When she discussed the matter with Long Fei last night, all she wanted to do was beat around the bush to remind the head elder of a few things. Now, what should she do? Uncle Cheng. Uncle Cheng. Han Yunxi changed the topic. I don't suspect Uncle Cheng. What I mean is that we hurry up and find Uncle Cheng. With such a major incident, whether it's a mole or an external enemy, it shows that Myriad Merchant Hall's defenses are too weak. Third elder and fourth elder should shoulder the burden of the casino. Let Uncle Ching come back to handle this. Han Yunxi's words were not as smooth as she usually was. Fortunately, the elders didn't sense anything strange. After all, this was a major incident at Myriad Merchant Hall. It was normal for them to be nervous. Princess is right. Men, hurry up and find Uncle Ching. Tell him that something big has happened here. Tell him to come back quickly. First elder immediately gave the order. Han Yunxi was relieved. She thought that if Uncle Ching didn't kidnap them, then her and Jia Dai's plan would go on as usual. If Uncle Ching really did kidnap them, then Uncle Ching would definitely follow up. In this way, the Council of Elders would naturally suspect him. No matter why the kidnappers had kidnapped Ning Jing and Mu Ling, Han Yunxi only hoped that Ning Jing and the child in her belly were safe. Your Highness, why don't we bring Tang Li here and test him? The Tang sect should give us an explanation about the pear flower storm needles. First elder said. Han Yunxi couldn't imagine whether Tang Li would go crazy if he knew that Ning Jing was missing. She should give Tang Li a heads up in private. However, at this juncture, it would be difficult for her to go to the prison in private. She could only hope that Tang Li wouldn't be too impulsive. Han Yunxi hid her worries and uneasiness in her heart. She said lightly, "It's time to deal with it. Bring him to the council chamber." Tang Li, who knew nothing about everything, was very obedient and well-behaved. He let the guards tie him up and didn't resist at all. After being brought to the council chamber, he found an opportunity when no one was paying attention and even winked at Han Yunxi naughtily. A few days ago, Han Yunxi clearly felt that brother Tang Li had grown up. However, at this moment, she found that he was as silly as a child. Han Yunxi's heart ached at the sight of Tang Li, who'd lost so much weight that he was almost unrecognizable and tied up. Ning Jing, where are you? Do you miss your Ollie? Sect Master Tang, please take a seat. The first elder still prepared a chair for Tang Li. Tang Li's legs were tied up, so he could only hop over and sit down. He sneered, so the D clan still has manners of hospitality. Several elders were about to fly into a rage, but the first elder stopped them with a look. He said, Sect Master Tang, you've been missing for so many days. The Tang clan should be anxious. Does that mean that first elder is planning to let me go? Tang Li's face became serious. You have to return the money that my wife and I won. Otherwise, I won't leave. The first elder's expression changed when he said this. Chapter 930. Tang Li wasn't explaining that the pear blossom storm needles was faked. He was clearly confessing. Unfortunately, Ning Jing wasn't present, so Ning Jing couldn't hear it. Tang Li asked the second elder, Old man, do you know how to torture a woman? The second elder clenched his fists and was about to scold Tang Li for bullying a woman, which wasn't what a man should do. Who knew that Tang Li would say, make her fall in love with you, make her unable to leave you, and then make her scram. As soon as he said this, the entire place fell silent. Everyone looked at Tang Li in disbelief. Tang Li looked at the third elder, Old man, has a woman ever loved you? Why does she love you? The third elder looked embarrassed and avoided Tang Li's gaze. Tang Li asked again, do you know what kind of flowers your wife likes? What kind of cloth does she like to wear? What are the flavors of her 3 meals? What does Xiao Dian like to eat? Which shop's jewelry and rouge does she like? What size shoes does she wear? What kind of fragrance does she like to use for baths? How long will she laze in bed? Will her anger dissipate after being angry for a long time? As Tang Li spoke, he smiled to himself and continued, what are the days of the month when her temper is the worst? The entire place fell silent. Several elders lowered their heads. It wasn't clear whether they were embarrassed or ashamed. Han Yunxi couldn't help but think of Long Fei Yi. She suddenly missed him very much. Long Fei Yi knew everything about her, no matter how big or small. None of the servant girls were smiling now. They were all looking at Tang Li with adoring gazes. How could they have thought that the dignified Tang sect master would care about so many small things? How much did a man have to love a woman to be willing to spend time and effort to understand these things? Actually, love wasn't high and mighty. It wasn't above the common populace. Love was built up from many trivial things in daily life. The more trivial it was, the more beautiful it was. I know. Over the past year, Tang Li's tolerance and compromises, Tang Li's doting and shielding of his own people were needless to say, and Ning Jing's unruly, crafty, mean, and cruel ways were also needless to say. With just one sentence, "I know everything," it was enough to show how much Tang Li had done, how much he had paid attention to, and how much he had understood in the past year. Everyone looked at him, waiting for him to continue. However, he ended the confession with one sentence. He said, "Unfortunately, I can't torture Ning Jing. She hasn't fallen in love with me yet, but I can't leave her." This kind of farewell was simple and real, yet beautiful and dreamy. Why couldn't Ning Jing hear it? Tang Li looked at Han Yunxi and asked seriously, "Han Yunxi, long before you met Ning Jing, the pear flower storm needles were empty. I used them all when I ran away from my marriage. If I didn't use them at that time, I would have married someone else. I was afraid that I couldn't marry Ning Jing, so I had to fake it. I have nothing to say about this. If Ning Jing doesn't want to go home with me because of this betrothal gift, then you don't have to let me go. Lock me up, and I'll eat and live here. I won't leave." Great Elder looked at Han Yunxi, and Han Yunxi also looked at Great Elder. Because of the disturbance at the casino and auction house, Tang Li's matter had been delayed. Back then, it was also Ning Qing who instructed Great Elder to put Tang Li and Ning Jing under house arrest. Ning Cheng's original plan was to kidnap Tang Li to threaten the cooperation between the Tang sect and Cloud Realm's arms trade, so that Ning Jing wouldn't have to waste time dealing with it. But now the situation had changed. Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi still had to cooperate, and the war between Eastern and Western Qin wouldn't start so soon. Ning Qing wasn't here, and Ning Jing's whereabouts were unknown, so Great Elder didn't dare to make the final decision. Great Elder thought that since Tang Li really liked Ning Jing, it meant that Miss Jing had already succeeded in half. It shouldn't be difficult to facilitate the cooperation between the two sides. Now that the D clan was in trouble, it wasn't good to have another conflict with the Tang sect. It was better to let Tang Li go and tell him about Ning Jing. First, they could ask the Tang sect to help find her. Second, they could maintain their relationship with the Tang sect, which would be easier to talk to in the future. The head elder stepped forward and whispered his thoughts into Han Yunxi's ear. Han Yunxi didn't expect Tang Li to confess like this, but she could guess Great Elder's consideration. She secretly gave Tang Li a look, hoping to give him a hint to calm him down. Tang Li saw Han Yunxi's hint, but she didn't know if he understood her meaning. Han Yunxi said calmly, "Come, untie the Tang sect leader." Tang Li had been holding it in, but he couldn't hold it in anymore. He asked anxiously, "Where's Ning Jing? Where's my wife?" With this clever confession, Tang Li didn't need to hide his love, nor did he need to pretend. Now, he could openly announce to everyone that he liked Ning Jing. He even planned to bring Ning Jing back to the Tang sect and threaten the elders with the child in Ning Jing's belly. He was the only son of the 9th generation of the Tang sect. If those elders, especially his father, dared to touch Ning Jing, he would definitely make them regret it. "Hurry up and ask Ning Jing to come out." If she wants a betrothal gift, I'll give it to her. When she returns to the Tang sect, she can choose any hidden weapon she wants. Although Ning Jing's choice of hidden weapon was different from the cooperation between the Tang sect and the arms trade, Tang Li's words still made the elders' eyes light up. They were all annoyed. How could they have been so busy recently that they forgot about the Tang sect? If they had interrogated Tang Li earlier, perhaps Tang Li would have brought Ning Jing back to the Tang sect long ago, and the arms trade would have been completed very quickly. Now that Ning Jing was missing, how were they going to explain to Tang Li? Han Yunxi didn't speak for a long time, and the elders also looked at each other. Tang Li, who was feeling happy, finally realized that something was wrong with Han Yunxi. He felt uneasy. What happened to Ning Jing? Or was there something wrong with his child? Tang Li was about to rush over and question her, but he was stopped by Han Yunxi's sharp gaze. Although the elders now believed in Tang Li, who could guarantee that this group of old men wouldn't think too much after Ning Jing's pregnancy was revealed. Ning Jing married into the Tang sect with a mission. If she was pregnant, she must be willing. Previously, when Ning Jing came to the three-way black market wearing a mask, Ning Cheng was already suspicious. If Ning Cheng was present today, Tang Li wouldn't be able to fool around so easily. At this juncture, it was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. Tang Li knew Han Yunxi's concerns. He calmed down and gave Han Yunxi a reassuring look. He knew that if he didn't calm down, Han Yunxi wouldn't say anything. Sect Master Tang, Ning Jing. Ning Jing went missing late last night. Before Han Yunxi could finish speaking, Tang Li rushed over. What did you say? Several guards immediately came forward to stop him. Tang Li insisted on grabbing Han Yunxi's collar and questioning her. Su Donglin, who was hiding in the dark, broke out in cold sweat. Han Yunxi's brows were tightly knitted as she stared into Tang Li's eyes. She didn't stop reminding him and said anxiously, Ning Jing hasn't been feeling well these few days. The doctor wants her to rest quietly. Mu Ling has been accompanying her. Late last night, robbers killed the servant girl in her room and kidnapped her and Mu Ling. The Elders Guild is already investigating. I hope you can stay calm and investigate this matter with the Elders Guild. Han Yunxi emphasized the last sentence. She asked again, Sect Master Tang, if they can sneak into Myriad Merchant Hall and kidnap people, their martial arts must be good. Have you and Ning Jing offended anyone before this? Han Yunxi had already said so much. If Tang Li still didn't understand, Han Yunxi was at her wit's end. Fortunately, Tang Li still had a bit of rationality left. He looked at Han Yunxi and clenched his fists tightly. After a long time, he calmed down. Our Tang sect has never interfered in worldly affairs. Who could we have offended? However, as for Ning Jing, I don't know who she has offended in the past. Miss Jing, previously, head elder had just opened his mouth when Tang Li angrily rebuked, didn't the guards be alarmed by such a big incident last night? Chapter 931. Han Yunxi knew about Willow Flower Lane. It was the most chaotic place in the three-way black market, with all sorts of people. No one could control it, so it was basically a lawless area. Deacon Jean had actually gone there to hide. Just how hard was Kangon Bank pushing him? Long Fei Yi didn't need the small amount of money he owed. Han Yunxi thought that Long Fei Yi probably wanted Deacon Jean to be pushed so hard by Kangon Bank, just like her, because of Deacon Jin's background. At this time, Han Yunxi didn't have time to think about this matter. Saving people was more important. Send someone to look for him and spread the word that if he's willing to come back, Myriad Merchant Hall will help him pay off his debt. Han Yunxi said seriously. This first elder hesitated. The Council of Elders was stingy to begin with, not to mention that the D clan's finances were tight. If the robbers are only after Ning Jing, then they can just kill Mu Ling. Why take Mu Ling away as well? Han Yunshi asked seriously. First elder finally realized this. You mean that Deacon Jean is here to seek revenge on Mu Ling? But Deacon Jean and Miss Jing have no grudges. Why take Miss Jing away? Fifth elder hurriedly said. There should be more than one robber. It's only a guess now. Hurry and spread the word. See if Deacon Jean comes. Han Yunshi said seriously. Now that they didn't have a single clue, they could only wait for the robbers to come and extort them while using the elimination method to investigate all possible suspects. Just as they were talking, someone from the auction hall came to deliver news of victory. This was the only consolation in the midst of all the troubles. The elders were very gratified and had more trust and expectations for Han Yunshi. The casino and auction hall can't be delayed, especially the reopening of the casino. Third elder and fourth elder will cooperate fully. We must reopen the casino as soon as possible. Everything in the auction went smoothly, and the second elder handled everything by himself. The fifth elder was in charge of handling Ning Jing's matter, so he had to calm Sect Master Tang down. Great elder, there is still no news of Ning Jing. Don't forget about this matter. Han Yunshi assigned the focus of the work and let the fifth elder deal with Ning Jing, which could save her a lot of trouble. Moreover, with the fifth elder's temper, he would soon suspect Uncle Ching. After everything was settled, everyone went about their own business. Han Yunshi immediately went to see Tang Li. At this moment, Tang Li was sitting on Ning Jing's couch, stroking the pillow and silk quilt that she had used before, savoring the fragrance that she had left behind. When Han Yunshi came in, she saw Tang Li clutching the silk blanket tightly and pressing it under his nose. After everything was exposed in Medical City, he had never hugged her again. Tang Li didn't even notice Han Yunshi coming in. He was immersed in longing and self-blame. He had already given in so many times. Why couldn't he give in a few more times? If he had given in a few more times and told her that he liked her, they wouldn't have fallen to this point. Han Yunshi came to the bedside and looked at Tang Li's pained face. She remained silent. At this time, any comforting words that were too pleasant to hear were pale and powerless. After a long time, Tang Li murmured, "Sister-in-law, how many times do I have to give in before Ning Jing and I can be together?" He was willing to give in to her and the D clan. Han Yunshi smiled bitterly. She and Long Fei Yi had been moving forward all this time, trying their best to complete the 100 steps. However, Tang Li and Ning Jing were giving in. Tang Li gave in. Ning Jing was pregnant. Ning Jing betrayed Ning Qing. Ning Jing wanted to escape from the D clan. Why didn't they give in? Don't think too much. Ning Jing is very smart. As long as the kidnappers have a request, she will definitely be able to turn misfortune into blessings. Han Yunshi wasn't comforting him. She was speaking the truth. Han Yunshi then analyzed Uncle Cheng and Deacon Jin's suspicions in detail for Tang Li. She instructed, "I will arrange for Fifth Elder to be fully in charge of this. You must stay calm and cooperate with him." Tang Li looked up. "Sister-in-law, I'm scared of the child." Before he could finish speaking, Han Yunshi coldly interrupted him. "Enough. Don't hide here and be afraid. No matter what the situation is, let's find them first. What's the use of being afraid here? If you were afraid, why did you let Ning Jing get pregnant in the first place? Pregnancy was never something that could be done by one person's will alone. If Tang Li didn't bully anyone, would Ning Jing have a chance?" Han Yunshi's words were very unpleasant and grating. However, these were the only words that could truly wake Tang Li up. Tang Li fiercely jabbed his face and stood up decisively. I will go to Willow Flower Alley now. I am familiar with that place. Ever since Long Fei Yi took charge of East Origin Hall, Tang Li often went to Willow Flower Alley. When he went to find people, he was much more efficient than the people sent by Myriad Merchant Hall. Han Yunxi secretly sighed. She was now hoping that Ning Jing and the others had been kidnapped by Deacon Jean. Deacon Jean only wanted money. Things that could be settled with money were much simpler. Tang Li was about to leave when Han Yunxi hurriedly stopped him. Your brother is in East Origin Hall. If you need help, go find him. Also, help me pass a message. Just say that there has been a change in the plan. Ask him to wait a few more days for me. Hearing this, Tang Li turned back and said seriously, Sister-in-law, regarding the 100 Poison sect matter, you all will act according to plan. You don't have to worry about me. Han Yunxi couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with him. That was Long Fei Yi's past. Chapter 932. Before Consort 1 killed herself, she left Long Fei Yi with 2 words. One was, Fei, remember how your imperial father and I died. The other was, Fei, remember the meaning of your life. After Tang Li fell silent, Han Yunxi's heart ached so much that she couldn't breathe. She couldn't imagine how much Long Fei Yi had endured. It wasn't a burden on his shoulders, but in his heart. Only by knowing how much he'd suffered would she know how much he'd conceded. Only then would she know how much he'd struggled and suffered when he chose to accept her, love her, and hide her identity from her. But he hadn't mentioned a word about any of it. It was as if none of it had ever happened, and she knew nothing about it. Compared to her responsibilities as the Princess of Western Qin, Long Fei Yi's burden was a true inner torment. Seeing Han Yunxi's red eyes, Tang Li realized he'd said too much. He was about to speak when Han Yunxi grabbed his sleeve and said, Tang Li, I'll leave Ning Jing and Mu Ling, to you. And don't tell your big brother that I know so much. Thank goodness this woman was still rational. Tang Li exhaled. I understand. Don't worry and go. Han Yunxi didn't send anyone else to tell Long Fei Yi to change the time. She gave herself an hour to calm down and collect her emotions. Once she'd buried all her pain in her heart, she left to take care of Myriad Merchant Hall's affairs. Head Elder, have you notified everyone about the alliance? Han Yunxi asked. I've already discussed it with the elders yesterday. It's better to wait until after the princess leaves. Princess, please don't worry. The Council of Elders will take care of everything below, the head elder said seriously. Han Yunxi relaxed at his words. A complicated look flickered past her eyes before she said, after notifying everyone, spread the news as well. I want all of Cloud Realm Continent to know that East and West Qin are working together. The Great Elder hesitated. Han Yunxi coldly said, if we don't take this chance to confront East Qin, could it be we'll let East Qin keep slandering our Western Qin royal family? I want the world to know that the civil war in the Great Qin Empire was not the fault of Western Qin. Influenced by Han Yunxi's imposing manner, First Elder also became excited. Yes. This subordinate will do as you say. What the First Elder didn't know was that Han Yunxi had already made a very ruthless decision. Princess, about Ning Jing. The Great Elder asked tentatively. According to the D clan's rules and style, Ning Jing's matters weren't as important as the Wind clan's. Even if Ning Jing's life was in danger, the Wind clan's matters were still the priority. But the Great Elder still hadn't figured out the princess's style or temperament after spending time with her. More importantly, it wasn't just Ning Jing who was missing, but Mu Ling as well. Thus, he didn't dare to act on his own and could only test the waters. Ning Jing's matters have already been handed over to Fifth Elder. Keep an eye on him and have him cooperate with the Tang clan head. I've already made an appointment with Long Fei Yi. We'll set out in the afternoon, Han Yunxi said seriously. Princess, please be careful. This subordinate has arranged for 2 guards to protect you, the Great Elder said. Han Yunxi didn't refuse, but said, wait by the door. There were still 2 more hours before Long Fei's appointment, but Han Yunxi had already taken care of everything. If this was the past, she'd definitely take a bath and prepare some dry rations before leaving the house. But how could she have the mind to do that? She wanted to see that man immediately and tightly hug him. How could he? How could he not tell her anything? Did he want to hide it from her forever? How could he bear this much? Being separated from Long Fei Yi so many times, even being separated for several months, it didn't feel as bad as these 2 hours. Han Yunxi sat in the wheelchair, sitting alone in the room. She was waiting for news, waiting for him to send someone to pick her up. She already couldn't calmly think about anything. Finally, there was a knock on the door. Your Highness, the East Qin Crown Prince has sent someone over. Han Yunxi suddenly looked up and saw the door open. Standing at the door was no one else but Su Donglin. Princess of Western Qin, please. Su Donglin was neither servile nor overbearing as he rushed to push Han Yunxi's wheelchair before the servant girls could. The Great Elder waited on one side. As soon as Han Yunxi left the room, he signaled for the 2 guards to follow her. They escorted her all the way to the back door before he spoke. Your Highness, take care. Don't worry. Long Fei Yi won't dare to act rashly when everyone in the world knows. Han Yunxi even gave the Great Elder a bewitching potion before she left. Most likely, he'd spread the news of the alliance between East and Western Qin to every corner of Cloud Realm continent very soon. The 5th Elder and the 4th Elder also came to see him off. In front of Su Donglin, they remained silent and did not say anything. At the back door, all of the elders stopped. Su Donglin escorted Han Yunxi to her carriage while the 2 guards followed them all the way to the 3-way Black Market's west gate. Han Yunxi finally saw the familiar carriage. It was a large and sturdy carriage parked there with Gao Bohu on one side. Long Fei Yi should be inside. Behind the large carriage were 2 smaller ones. The 2 guards assumed that the small carriage was prepared for Han Yunxi, but Han Yunxi knew that Bailey Mingxiang was inside. In the end, they were still at the 3-way Black Market's gates with guards following them. Su Donglin quickly invited Han Yunxi to the small carriage. Princess, this way please. Long Fei Yi sat in the large carriage, expressionless as he studied a specially made map. He heard Su Donglin's voice, but didn't bat an eyelid. As soon as Han Yunxi boarded the small carriage, Bailey Mingxiang didn't dare to sit. But the carriage was too small for her to stand up, so she was at a loss. Han Yunxi didn't speak, but pressed down on her shoulder to make her sit back down. Bailey Mingxiang didn't know that there were guards following them outside, so she didn't understand why the princess had run over to her place. Hurry up and go. We need to find a place to rest before it gets dark. This princess doesn't want to sleep in the wilderness, Han Yunxi urged. Although the person in question didn't speak, Gao Bohu and Su Donglin didn't dare to slight Han Yunxi. The 2 of them immediately set off. With a flick of their whips, the horses ran extremely fast. The 2 guards sent by First Elder rode their horses and followed closely behind Han Yunxi's carriage. How would Han Yunxi deal with these 2 obstructing guards? Shake them off. Su Donglin was waiting for his master's orders. Su Donglin guessed that Her Highness would speak first, but who knew that after they were far away from the three-way black market, Han Yunxi would speak. Su Donglin, stop the carriage. Su Donglin immediately pulled the reins and slowly stopped the carriage. He called for Gao Bohu to stop the carriage as well. The two guards were puzzled. They dismounted and were about to go forward when they suddenly heard Han Yunxi shout, "Long Fei Yi, come over here." The two guards immediately froze. Su Donglin and Gao Bohu were shocked. What was the princess doing? Bailey Mingxiang was also shocked when she saw the guards from Myriad Merchant Hall. Actually, Long Fei Yi was as surprised as they were. He naturally had to send these two guards away, but now was not the time. He had to keep them for a few days so that they could send a few messages back to Myriad Merchant Hall. After reassuring the Elder Council, he would deal with them. They had just left the three-way black market, and the sky was not even dark yet. What was Han Yunxi trying to do? Was she in a hurry? When did she become so clingy? Thinking of this, Long Fei Ye's lips curled into a faint smile. He did not say anything and allowed Han Yunxi to be willful. Even if her willfulness caused a huge disaster, he would be able to clean it up for her. Long Fei Yi, come over here. Are you coming over or not? Han Yunxi shouted again. Long Fei Yi very obediently got off the carriage and walked over. He wasn't dressed in black today, but loose white robes. His ink-black hair was tied up casually, giving him an air of lazy nobility. He was like a high and lofty god who couldn't be offended. Even Uncle Gao and Su Donglin couldn't help but steal a few more glances at him, to say nothing of the women. Bailey Mingxiang didn't dare to look, her head bowed. Just the sight of his boots and robes was enough to make her heart bow and submit to him. Chapter 933. Long Fei Yi, let's never be apart, okay? Han Yunxi asked seriously. No matter what the reason was, she didn't want to leave him, and she couldn't leave him again. Who bullied you? Tell me. This was what Long Fei Yi was concerned about. Who else could bully Han Yunxi to this extent? She was about to cry. If she wasn't afraid of Long Fei Yi's questioning, she would have buried her head in his arms and cried bitterly. But why was she crying? He was the one who had gone through all that torture and suffering, not her. It was useless for her to cry until she was blind. She could only hug him tightly and feel the reality of him. Luckily, he had made it through. Luckily, he had become stronger. Seeing that Han Yunxi's eyes were red, Long Fei Yi was angry. His tone suddenly turned cold. What happened? Who bullied you? Tell me clearly. No. She avoided his hand and buried her head in his arms again. I just missed you. I missed you. Han Yunxi wasn't a clingy woman, and she wasn't a woman who would act coquettishly and express her love for no reason. Seeing her like this, Long Fei Yi had to suppress his anxiety and anger. He bent down, cupped her face, and asked patiently, "Be good. Tell me, what happened?" Han Yunxi shook her head and hugged him again. She hugged him tightly, and Long Fei Yi couldn't pull her up no matter how hard he tried. Long Fei Yi couldn't do anything about it. Just as he was about to call Su Donglin over to ask, Han Yunxi let go and covered his mouth. Long Fei Yi, I want to give birth to your children. Give birth to a dozen children, okay? Han Yunxi asked seriously. Long Fei Yi was stunned at first, and then he couldn't help but laugh. Of course it was okay. But he had to figure out what was wrong with this woman first. Why? Why are you suddenly? He smiled bitterly. What happened to you? I felt terrible when I saw Ning Jing and Tang Li. Han Yunxi could only come up with this excuse. Su Donglin had already reported everything that Tang Li had said in Myriad Merchant Hall today. Tang Li's actions also surprised Long Feiyi. Long Feiyi could predict that once Tang Li found Ning Jing, he would definitely fall out with the elders of the Tang sect. What's there to be upset about? Long Feiyi didn't understand women, but he trusted Han Yunxi. He said unhappily, "Don't worry, you won't get lost. I want to give birth to your child, okay?" Han Yunxi asked again. Long Feiyi had never seen Han Yunxi so serious. The corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. He nodded without hesitation. "As long as you're willing." However, he added, "Wait, until we come back this time." Han Yunxi could understand his misgivings. But Han Yunxi blurted out, "I want it now." Now, Long Feiyi was slightly stunned. Soon, he looked Han Yunxi up and down with interest. Did she really understand what he meant? Seeing Long Feiyi's suggestive gaze on her, Han Yunxi immediately blushed. Only then did she realize that she had spoken too quickly. "I'm not," she was about to explain when Long Feiyi interrupted her. "Are you sure you want it now?" "No, I'm not." Han Yunxi couldn't explain herself. Long Feiyi deliberately dragged out his tone. "Sure, as long as you're willing." Han Yunxi was embarrassed, angry, and amused at the same time. She hurriedly explained, "I'm talking about children. I want children. Not me." Long Feiyi finally couldn't help but laugh. He didn't forget to rub her bangs affectionately. He asked, "If you don't want, how are you going to have children?" Han Yunxi's face turned even redder. She couldn't refute him. She really lost to him. Her gloomy mood was also amused by him amidst her crying, laughing, and anger. How could this be? She was the one who felt sorry for him and wanted to hug him. In the end, he was the one who comforted her and coaxed her. "Long Feiyi, how exactly should I love you and protect you?" Fortunately, Long Feiyi didn't pursue the matter. Otherwise, Han Yunxi really didn't know how to answer him. She might as well just dig a hole and sell herself. At night, they stopped by a small stream at the foot of the mountain. Uncle Gao found a big tree to stop the carriage and started a fire. Su Donglin went to catch some game, and Bailey Mingxiang helped to roast it. Long Feiyi carried Han Yunxi to the stream and helped her change her bandages. The two imperial guards stood at the side, trembling with fear. They didn't know when the poison would take effect, and they just hoped that the princess would give them the antidote as soon as possible. "How do you plan to deal with those two imperial guards?" Long Feiyi asked in a low voice. He meant that the two imperial guards knew something they shouldn't know, and silencing them was the best choice. Han Yunxi waved at the imperial guards and asked them to come over. The two imperial guards immediately ran over and knelt down respectfully with their heads bowed. "What did Great Elder tell you?" Han Yunxi asked. Great Elder wanted this subordinate to report everything that happened here. He wanted the two of us to protect the princess, so we can't. The guard stole a glance at Long Fei, but didn't dare to say anything else. "Can't what?" Long Feiyi actually spoke. The ice-cold voice scared the imperial guards and the two of them didn't dare make a sound. "Are you going to speak or not?" Long Feiyi's voice was filled with warning. The imperial guards trembled for a while before saying, "We can't. We can't let the East Qin crown prince approach the princess at all." Seeing Long Feiyi's dark face, Han Yunxi secretly laughed in her heart. She wanted to warn the two imperial guards, but who would have thought that Long Feiyi would say, "You also saw it, it was the Western Qin princess who told this prince to go over." When these words were said, the two imperial guards shook their heads and waved their hands. No, 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 this subordinate didn't see anything. Her Highness and the East Qin Crown Prince went in separate carriages. This subordinate has been guarding the princess the entire time, and the East Qin Crown Prince has never approached the princess at all. You're certain? Long Feiyi asked again. The two imperial guards quickly nodded. Certain, certain. It's just like this. This subordinate will report everything to Great Elder. These two imperial guards weren't stupid. With Long Feiyi's warning, Han Yunshi didn't need to explain anything. Very quickly, the imperial guards blew a whistle and summoned a hawk. Under Long Feiyi's gaze, they reported the truth to the Great Elder. Han Yunshi threw the antidote over. Remember to ask me for the antidote in 2 days, otherwise. Han Yunshi deliberately didn't say the following words, scaring the two imperial guards so much that their faces turned white. After taking care of these two imperial guards, they were much more relaxed on the road. It also dispelled the Great Elder's final doubts. After resting for half an hour, Han Yunshi's group set off again. Long Feiyi had already made arrangements for the 100 Poisons sect, so they didn't have much time to waste on the road. Before leaving, Long Feiyi couldn't help saying, I thought you wouldn't take care of those two imperial guards that quickly. Han Yunshi didn't try to figure out the meaning behind his words and directly replied, I was impatient. Long Feiyi never thought that this girl would be this direct. He raised a brow as he looked at her, feeling that something was wrong. It was a good thing that Han Yunshi came over in time. She brought over the map he had made and diverted his attention. Han Yunshi looked at the map while chatting with Long Feiyi. She didn't mention a single thing about what she knew about Long Feiyi's childhood. She could only be assured in his embrace. While chatting, she unknowingly fell asleep. That night, they crossed over the mountains and headed southwest. However, they didn't know that two people had crossed the mountains at the same time and were heading northeast. They brushed past each other. These two people were none other than Gu and Gu Beiyue. If it wasn't Han Yunshi and Long Feiyi working together, then there was only one person in this world who could kill Bai Yanqing's poison guards, and that was Gu. The moonlight shrouded the mountains and forests. Gu and Gu Beiyue rode separately on their horses and galloped through the mountains and forests. An enchanting woman in red, devastatingly beautiful. Her luxurious and wide robe fluttered in the wind. Her robe fluttered in the wind along with her horses' galloping gallops, covering the entire mountain, the sky, and the moon. She was flamboyant, wanton, and delightful. The other was dressed in snow-white robes. He was like an immortal, gentle as water. He was the white that the ostentatious red beside him couldn't cover up, the white that couldn't be overturned. Even if the entire world was in a hubbub, he would still be as indifferent as the spring breeze, but he could be gentle to all things. The two men galloped through the mountains. Their figures swam like dragons, winding through the small paths in the mountains. When the first ray of sunlight brushed past their faces, they stopped at the foot of the mountain. Dr. Gu, here. Gu tossed over a canteen of water. After galloping through the night, he showed no signs of fatigue. Under the illumination of the sun, he instead seemed even more spirited. Gu Beiyue caught the canteen and drank a few mouthfuls. He smiled. You can just call me North Moon. Forget it. I'll call you Lone Moon. Your surname isn't Gu. Gu raised an eyebrow and replied with a question. According to the secret letter Gu Beiyue had sent over, he searched through all the suspicious valleys and finally found North Moon, saving him. Along the way, Gu Beiyue also told him the entire truth behind his cooperation with Long Feiyi. Ever since he learnt the truth, he had not said a single word. He galloped all the way here with Gu Beiyue. It had already been 2 days and 2 nights without resting. Fortunately, he had cured Gu Beiyue's poison a long time ago. Otherwise, with Gu Beiyue's body, he probably would not have been able to indulge himself like this. Names are just a form of address. Whatever. Gu Beiyue did not mind. After curing the poison, his complexion was clearly much better than before. During the past 2 days and 2 nights, he could have called for a stop, but he did not. Instead, he accompanied Gu Beiyue to the end. Galloping was a form of catharsis. Some people relied on this method to heal the pain in their hearts. He would never forget Gu's resplendent smile when he saw him, nor would he forget the moment when Gu's eyes dimmed when he learnt the truth behind his cooperation with Long Fei Yi. When he saw him, Gu was filled with passion. He said to him, "Dr. Gu, come with me. Let's save the poison girl together. We'll help her revive her kingdom and conquer the world." After learning the entire truth, only now did Gu speak. Gu Beiyue was unable to understand where he stood on the grievances between Eastern and Western Qin and whether he trusted Long Fei Yi. However, he definitely felt disappointed. Gu thought for a while before waving his hand impatiently. Forget it, forget it. The poison girl calls you Dr. Gu, so just call her that." He looked towards the north and yawned. "The 3-way black market is up ahead. We'll be there in a day's journey." Gu Beiyue passed the canteen over and said indifferently, "Seventh young master, if the princess is willing to trust the East Qin crown prince, you..." Chapter 934. Gu still thought that Han Yunxi had been placed under house arrest by Ning Qing, while Gu Beiyue still didn't understand Cloud Realm situation or the various powers. Before Gu Beiyue could finish, Gu interrupted him. "That's their business. It has nothing to do with me. Ning Qing tricked me, this matter isn't over." A complicated look flitted past Gu Beiyue's eyes, but he didn't pursue the matter. Perhaps Gu was only willing to discuss this matter with Han Yunxi. Now, seeing Han Yunxi was the most important thing. With Long Fei Ye's personality, how could he allow Ning Qing to put Han Yunxi under house arrest for so long? Unless Han Yunxi would rather be put under house arrest by Ning Qing than forgive him. But even if she did forgive him, how could Han Yunxi face the heavy responsibility of reviving Western Qin? Ignorance is blameless. She still didn't know who she was or what she was shouldering. She could still be herself. Once she knew everything, could she still be as carefree and unrestrained as before? Gu Beiyue didn't know what choice Han Yunxi would make, but he was certain that Han Yunxi's choice would determine his own. "How do you plan to deal with Ning Qing?" Gu Beiyue asked. "It's best if he dies at Bai Yanqing's hands. Otherwise, if he dies at my hands, he'll feel even worse." Gu said coldly. "Let's go." Gu Beiyue said faintly. No matter what, they had to see the princess first. The two of them quickly sped off in the direction of 3-way black market. Gu really was a heartless thing. Even now, he still hadn't thought of Mu Ling Er. At this time, Mu Ling Er was also in the forest, forced to head north. In the carriage, Ning Jing was half lying with a pale face, her legs bound. Mu Ling Er was sitting beside her, her hands tied behind her back. Suddenly, the carriage jolted and the two of them unconsciously leaned forward. "Ning Jing, be careful." Mu Ling Er cried out in alarm. Without hesitation, she fell in front of Ning Jing to block her. Not to mention Ning Jing's body, even a normal pregnant woman wouldn't be able to withstand such a jolting carriage. Mu Ling Er fell flat on her face, but as soon as the carriage stabilized, she immediately raised her head and struggled for a while before sitting up. "Ning Jing, are you all right? Are you all right?" Ning Jing was scared out of her wits as well. Fortunately, she didn't fall, or else the consequences would have been unthinkable. It's nothing. She was still panicking. That's good, that's good. Mu Ling was 100 times more nervous than her. Unexpectedly, just as she finished speaking, the carriage jolted again. Fortunately, it was a small jolt this time and not a big one. However, a small jolt was still a jolt. If it continued, Mu Ling didn't dare to imagine the consequences. I'll tell them. Mu Ling said angrily. You're not allowed. Ning Jing cut him off harshly. If she hadn't experienced it herself, she would find it hard to believe that there was a spy in Myriad Merchant Hall. These two men in black had used the voice-changing technique, so she couldn't tell anything. She only knew that one of them was old and the other was young. The one who kidnapped her was the old man. He sat outside the carriage the whole way and was extremely fierce towards her and Mu Ling. The one who kidnapped Mu Ling was the young man. He was in charge of driving the carriage and spoke very little. So far, he hadn't spoken more than 5 sentences. Mu Ling's eyes were immediately filled with tears. I beg you. Before she could finish, the old man in black slammed the curtains down and ignored her. Mu Ling was unwilling to give up and begged again, I beg you to change the carriage. If this bumpy ride continues, the child in my womb will. Before she could finish, the man in black who was driving the carriage suddenly stopped. He lifted the curtains and glared at Mu Ling. Mu Ling and Ning Jing were very surprised, but they couldn't care less. Mu Ling cried, Sir, I beg you. The child is innocent. If anything happens to my child, you won't be able to get any benefits by kidnapping me. Sob sob. Needless to say, when Mu Ling was acting, her big, watery eyes were especially moving. The two had no choice but to believe her. The old man in black snorted coldly. Goose child. Mu Ling really hadn't considered this question, but being misunderstood like this, she nodded without hesitation. It's Chi brothers. I beg you, as long as you can save this child. No matter what you want to do, Chi brother will definitely agree. Interesting. Ha. The old man in black looked at the young man. The young man's eyes were gloomy and cold. Pregnant before marriage. Shameless. What a slut. Goose still doesn't know that Ling is pregnant with his child. If you can save this child, no matter what you want to do, you'll have another bargaining chip. Ning Jing also spoke up. The black-robed old man seemed to waver, but the young man remained unmoved. Ning Jing quickly added, the two of you, this is the wilderness. If Ling miscarries and can't find a doctor, 2 lives will be lost. Don't regret it. Mu Ling started to cry. Chi brother, sob sob. Chi brother, where are you? Originally, it was just an act, but crying like this suddenly touched the wound in her heart, and her emotions couldn't be controlled. The more Mu Linger cried, the more heartbroken she felt. Her cries of Chi Gij were enough to break anyone's heart. Not to mention the 2 men in black, even Ning Jing almost believed her. The old man in black laughed and said, don't even think about changing carriages. Pick the road. Unexpectedly, the young man said coldly, serves you right if you die. With that, the curtains were fiercely lowered. However, after a while, the carriage didn't jolt as much, and it slowed down considerably. Mu Ling secretly heaved a sigh of relief. She winked at Ning Jing and made funny faces. Ning Jing's nervous mood finally relaxed, and she was amused by Mu Ling. Ning Jing said in a low voice, Mu Ling, I I think the guy who kidnapped you has a grudge against you. Mu Ling was slightly startled. Ning Jing analyzed the situation to her in a low voice, and Mu Ling immediately called out a name. Deacon Jean. If there was a grudge, and it was a member of Myriad Merchant Hall, then it could only be Deacon Jean. If it was him, then why did he kidnap you? Mu Ling asked in a low voice. This was also something that Ning Jing couldn't figure out. Judging from the interaction between the old man in black and the young man, they didn't seem to be superior and subordinate, but more like collaborators. Ning Jing really couldn't guess who in Myriad Merchant Hall would kidnap her and be familiar with Deacon Jean. He's not going to sell us to Winter Crow Kingdom as slaves, is he? Mu Ling was frightened. Winter Crow Kingdom wasn't famous for its warhorses, but for its slave trade. You and I can't get a good price in Winter Crow Kingdom, but we can extort a sum from Myriad Merchant Hall on Han Yunxi, Ning Jing said seriously. As they chatted, the carriage suddenly stopped. This time, it was the young man who came in. Coldly, he looked at Mu Ling and didn't speak for a long time. Even Ning Jing was scared, but Mu Ling was much bolder. She stared back with wide eyes, not to be outdone. I'm very valuable. Yes. Very valuable. The young man sneered. What do you want? The young man didn't answer. He suddenly picked up Mu Ling and sat her down. He untied her, only binding her feet. Then, he threw her a kettle and 2 cold steamed buns before leaving. Mu Ling was overjoyed. After confirming that the young man wouldn't come in again, she hurriedly used the hot water in the kettle to soften the cold steamed buns. Then, she handed them to Ning Jing. Eat quickly, quick. I can't eat that much. You eat too, Ning Jing said in a low voice. I'll only give you 1, no more. Mu Ling said as she wrapped the other steamed bun in a handkerchief and hid it well. I have to save this to save my life. God knows what they want. Ning Jing's heart, which had been cold since she was young, suddenly warmed up. It was so warm that she wanted to cry. Meanwhile, in Myriad Merchant Palace, Tang Li and the 5th Elder had already locked onto Deacon Jean as the suspect. He didn't even show up to repay his debt. Who else could it be other than him? Tang Li's expression was malicious. He searched all over the brothels but couldn't find Deacon Jean. The 5th Elder was about to speak when a servant came in to report, 5th Elder, Clan Master Tang, there's news of Uncle Qing. Note to the reader, yesterday's seniority was wrong. Tang Li should be called Consort Wan, not Wan. Mo seems to have been wrong about seniority. Go face the wall. Chapter 935. Uncle Cheng's back. 5th Elder asked nervously. Although 5th Elder usually had a bad opinion of Uncle Qing, he didn't want a traitor to appear in Myriad Merchant Hall, especially Uncle Qing who had followed Master Ning for so many years. He didn't come back. It's just that the manager of Prosperous Heaven Bank said he saw Uncle Qing a few nights ago, the manservant replied truthfully. A few days ago. Which day? Tang Li asked warily. Reporting to son-in-law, this one isn't sure. This one has already found the manager of Prosperous Heaven Bank. He's waiting at the door, the manservant replied. Why haven't you called him in yet? Tang Li was anxious. They'd only confirmed that Deacon Jean was no longer in three-way black market after 2 days, yet they didn't have a single clue. Cloud Realm was so big, where could he find his wife and children? As soon as Prosperous Heaven Bank's manager came in, Tang Li shouted angrily, when did you see Uncle Qing? Speak in detail, or you'll lose your life. Prosperous Heaven Bank's manager was frightened by these words and sent a pleading look to Fifth Elder. Because Han Yunshi had personally instructed him before leaving, Fifth Elder was very polite and cooperative to Tang Li. He also said angrily, "Tell me everything you know in detail. If you hide anything, you'll bear the consequences." Prosperous Heaven Bank's manager didn't dare to be negligent and immediately reported everything Uncle Ching had said and done at Prosperous Heaven Bank that night. Fifth Elder was shocked. "You're saying that on the night Princess and Head Elder returned, Uncle Ching went to Prosperous Heaven Bank?" "Exactly. This one doesn't dare to lie." At the time, there were 3 workers in the bank who all saw it, Prosperous Heaven Bank's manager answered truthfully. After a moment's hesitation, he said, "Fifth Elder, yesterday Uncle Ching received a sum of money. I don't know. Uncle Ching was in charge of many and miscellaneous affairs in the D clan, so he also had a lot of accounts on hand. Most of them came from Prosperous Heaven Bank, so this wasn't strange. However, for Prosperous Heaven Bank's manager to mention it like this, there must be something strange. Why are you being so long-winded? Speak." The Fifth Elder said unhappily. It was only then that Tianlong's shopkeeper did not hide the fact that Tang Li was present. He reported seriously, "Uncle Cheng's debt is relatively large. It's more than 100 million. "What debt?" The Great Elder's voice rang out before he even arrived. Soon, everyone saw him enter from the side door. "It's very strange." The person who sent the banknotes didn't say anything. He only left 2 surnames and said that Uncle Ching would understand. The Tianlong shopkeeper answered truthfully. "What surname?" Great Elder asked uneasily. "Jia and Dai." Tianlong's shopkeeper replied. "Jia, Dai." The Great Elder's face was pale and he almost fell forward. Fortunately, the attendant caught him in time. "Jia and Dai, how were these 2 surnames? They were the same name. She was the original owner of West Jade Garden and South Jew Garden. Only the Council of Elders knew the details of the purchase of the gardens." Tianlong's shopkeeper naturally did not recognize this name. That day, the Great Elder had rushed back to Three-Way Black Market after he and the princess had finished discussing all matters. Uncle Ching had clearly said that he was going south to hire a dealer for the new casino. Who would have thought that he would actually go to Prosperous Heaven Bank that night? This was obviously a lie. And after so many days, Jia and Dai had actually sent money to Uncle Ching. If the Great Elder still did not understand that there was something fishy about this, he should commit suicide as an apology. "Where did Uncle Ching go that night?" the Great Elder asked angrily. Tianlong's shopkeeper, who did not understand the situation, shook his head repeatedly. Uncle Ching seemed to be waiting for someone. He left without waiting. This lowly one has not seen him since. The Fifth Elder's face was livid, while Tang Li sneered inwardly. Han Yunshi had told him about the purchase of the gardens. Uncle Cheng was disloyal to Myriad Merchant Hall and was in charge of its defense. This was too suspicious. Tang Li thought that Jia Dai must have received his older brother's orders. Otherwise, he would not have been so generous as to spend 100 million in banknotes to expose Uncle Cheng. Tang Li did not bat an eyelid. The Fifth Elder and the Great Elder exchanged glances. They had finally suspected Uncle Cheng. That day, the Great Elder ordered the transfer of guards from the military to replace all of Myriad Merchant Hall's guards. At the same time, he ordered the entire D clan to remove Uncle Cheng from all of his duties and authority and put Uncle Cheng on the wanted list. The Fifth Elder invited Tang Li to search for Jia Dai together, but Tang Li refused. Tang Li remained at Myriad Merchant Hall to investigate the guards in charge of the palace. Uncle Cheng's suspicions made the Great Elder realize the severity of the situation. He handed over the affairs of the auction house to others and personally interrogated the people from the former East Valley Bank to track down Deacon Jin's whereabouts. The two guards that the Great Elder had sent to Han Yunshi's side had given him false information, but the Great Elder's report to Han Yunshi was the truth. The Great Elder would promptly send a letter to Han Yunshi whenever there was any progress in the case of Ning Jing and Mu Ling's robbery. That afternoon, Han Yunshi and Long Fei settled down in a border town. Han Yunshi received the news that Uncle Cheng had been exposed. 100 million. Han Yunshi's heart ached for Long Fei. If it wasn't for Long Fei's instructions, Jia Dai wouldn't have dared to spend so much. Long Fei didn't take it to heart. He picked up some food for Han Yunshi. After traveling for several days, they could finally eat hot food. They would stay in the town for the night. Starting tomorrow, they would head straight for 100 Poison Sect. There would be no more time to rest on the road. Thus, he had Uncle Gao and Su Donglin hurry yesterday and reach the town in the afternoon. He wanted to give Han Yunshi ample time to rest, and also let Su Donglin and Uncle Gao replenish their rations. When Han Yunshi left Myriad Merchant Hall, she had specifically asked the Fifth Elder to keep an eye out for Gu's whereabouts. She didn't dare mention it in front of Long Fei. Just what did Gu Qishao run into at Black Tower? Why was there still no news of him? There was one more thing that Han Yunshi didn't understand. Long Fei, Bai Yuqiao kidnapped Ning Qing. There should be news by now, right? She asked seriously. Bai Yuqiao had kidnapped Ning Qing for so long. It should be time to use Ning Qing to threaten the D clan. However, there was no news at all. Could it be that Bai Yuqiao was still hellbent on finding Bai Yanqing after being tortured to such an extent by Bai Yanqing? Long Fei had also been considering this matter. There's no news from Zhu Nixie's side either. Could it be that she really went to find Bai Yanqing? Could she be hiding in 100 Poison Sect? Han Yunshi asked seriously. Long Fei couldn't figure it out and asked back, Bai Yanqing still hasn't made any moves in Northernly. What exactly does he want to do? Bai Yanqing hadn't gained any advantage from the D clan and had fallen at Black Tower. He should have returned to Northernly to help Zhu Nixie fight against the Northern Dynasty's emperors. However, Long Fei had been keeping an eye on Northernly's situation and hadn't received any news about Bai Yanqing. Zhu Nixie hadn't made any moves either. No matter what he wants to do, we can't let him escape this time. Han Yunshi's eyes flashed with viciousness. This time, she had to be ruthless. No matter what the reason was, no matter who it was, she couldn't be stopped. After dinner, the sky had just darkened. Long Fei taught Han Yunshi a few moves of the hidden needle technique. Han Yunshi learned very quickly. She had already cultivated her internal energy and could control the power of nirvana at will. Now, what she needed to do was to learn the needle technique that Long Fei had personally created for her. She named that nameless needle technique the Flying Cloud Needle Technique. Han Yunshi had just injected the needle according to Long Fei's instructions when Long Fei laughed. What are you laughing at? Han Yunshi asked, puzzled. Long Fei didn't answer. Instead, he retreated 10 steps and said to her, shoot the needle at me. If you hit it, you'll be heavily rewarded. Han Yunshi was amused. You want me to finish my apprenticeship so soon? If you hit it, you can consider it. Long Fei wasn't joking. Not only did Han Yunshi have an extremely high innate talent for cultivating internal energy, her comprehension was also very high. This kind of genius only needed a few pointers, and it wasn't impossible for her to learn without a teacher. Of course, he wouldn't let her learn without a teacher. He still enjoyed the process of teaching her martial arts. No matter how high Han Yunxi's innate talent was, if it wasn't a sneak attack, it was impossible to hit him. She had just cultivated her internal energy, so he wasn't in a hurry to dual cultivate the lustful power with her. He wanted to let her rest for a while and practice the needle technique well. Then I'll change the needle, just in case. Han Yunxi joked. Her needles were all poisonous. Long Fei Yi smiled but didn't say anything. He walked a few steps closer, closing the distance to help her reduce the difficulty. Be careful, I'm going to shoot the needle. Han Yunxi laughed mischievously. Long Fei Yi didn't panic as he waited. Han Yunxi took a stance, but didn't make a move for a long time. She just smiled foolishly at Long Fei Yi. Still not making a move. Long Fei Yi asked. Han Yunxi pretended to shoot, but all she did was shoot an empty needle. Long Fei saw through her at a glance. Playing dirty. I don't dare. Han Yunxi laughed. However, while she was laughing, 10 golden needles shot out and all of them hit Long Fei Yi's vital points without exception. Long Fei Yi didn't move. Seeing that the golden needles were about to enter his body, he didn't move at all. Long Fei Yi. Han Yunxi was anxious. She was just playing with him. She was sure that he would dodge, so she was so ruthless. Han Yunxi rushed over. However, in an instant, the golden needles all entered Long Fei Yi's body. Han Yunxi suddenly stopped. Although these golden needles weren't poisonous, they all hit vital points. The consequences were worse than being poisoned. What was this guy trying to do? She stopped and looked at him in disbelief. Unexpectedly, his eyes turned cold. The 10 golden needles suddenly bounced off his body and flew towards Han Yunxi's body according to their original path. So, he was playing dirty. Han Yunxi anxiously wanted to dodge, but it was too late. The 10 golden needles all entered her body. Fortunately, there was a difference between her and Long Fei Yi's body. The golden needles flew back according to their original path and didn't hit her vital points, but it hurt. Long Fei Yi, you're more treacherous than me. Han Yunxi angrily rebuked. The enemy is more treacherous than me. Remember, all's fair in war, especially when using hidden weapons. Many of the hits are just illusions. Long Fei Yi walked over as he asked indifferently, does it hurt? Han Yunxi immediately nodded. Besides her own medical needles, most of her needles had been specially made by Long Fei at the Tang clan's behest. The tips of the needles would hook into the flesh, making it very, very painful to be pierced. The instant the needle was pierced, it hurt even more when it was pulled out. You'll remember it when it hurts, Long Fei Yi said. I'll remember it. Han Yunxi didn't argue. Let's do it again. A strict teacher produces a fine student. But Long Fei simply scooped her up and carried her into the rooms. What are you doing? Han Yunxi asked, puzzled. I'm going to get rid of the needles, Long Fei Yi said indifferently. Just pull them out, Han Yunxi said. It'll hurt. Take care of it slowly in the house. I need to apply some medicine. Although Long Fei Yi's face was cold as ice, his words were simply too warm. What happened to being a strict teacher? Han Yunxi was very worried that she wouldn't be able to become a fine student. She had to seriously consider whether she should let Long Fei Yi personally teach the children martial arts in the future. That night, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi stayed at the inn while Gu and Gu Beiyue arrived at the three-way black market. No matter how big the problem is, as long as Kangon Private Bank is willing to step in, it won't be a problem. The head shopkeeper could not help but sigh. ruining this old man's business. Of course Gu knew of Kangon Private Bank's wealth, but he didn't think much of it. As long as he was unhappy, he'd accompany them to the end, no matter the price. He narrowed his eyes, his expression dangerous. But Gu Beiyue's whispered words made his face pale. Gu Beiyue murmured, "Seventh young master, Kangon Private Bank's master is Long Fei Yi." Gu gave a start before he exclaimed, "What did you say?" "There's something fishy about this. There must be some inside story." Gu Beiyue grew serious. Long Fei Yi had always known that Myriad Merchant Hall was part of Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. It was already good enough that he didn't make a move against them, so why would he use Kangon Private Bank's reputation to help them? While Gu's heart was still in turmoil, Gu Beiyue had long calmed down and looked at the head shopkeeper. "You're certain that Kangon Private Bank is cooperating with Myriad Merchant Hall? Have you found out who's pulling the strings?" Myriad Merchant Hall and Kangon Private Bank had never cooperated before, so there had to be someone pulling the strings. "That's not clear. This subordinate will investigate immediately." The head shopkeeper was about to leave and Gu Beiyue called him back. "Hold on, is Myriad Merchant Hall managed by the Council of Elders, or is Ning Qing personally in charge?" "A few days ago, there was an explosion at Black Tower. Everyone says that Ning Qing brought along the red-robed men. There are many rumors, but this subordinate hasn't been able to find out the truth. Myriad Merchant Hall has always been managed by the Council of Elders. You can even see a few of them at the auction house these days," the head shopkeeper replied honestly. The head shopkeeper had no idea what was going on at Black Tower, but Gu Beiyue had a rough idea. When they passed by Black Tower, they saw that it had already been reduced to ruins. Gu Beiyue turned to Gu and said, "Let's find out more about Black Tower first before we discuss the rest." Gu recovered his wits and silently sighed with emotion. Gu Beiyue really hit himself too deeply. He was a doctor, but he knew the business world and three-way black market like the back of his hand. Gu wasn't so patient. His face was gloomy as he said, "Find out what?" "I'll go find Ning Qing right now." Gu Beiyue stopped him and said, "I keep feeling that there's more to Kangon Private Bank's cooperation with Myriad Merchant Hall than meets the eye." After some hesitation, he said to Gu, "I'll take you somewhere." "Do you dare?" "Where?" Gu didn't understand. Gu Beiyue smiled faintly. "You'll know when we get there." "Then let's go." Besides a certain cave in Cloud Realm Continent, there was nowhere Gu didn't dare to go. Gu Beiyue brought Gu to none other than East Origin Hall. When Gu followed Gu Beiyue out of the secret passageway and into the back courtyard of East Origin Hall, Gu couldn't help but exclaim, "Well done, Gu Beiyue. So you're the mastermind behind East Origin Hall." Gu Beiyue smiled and replied modestly, "Seventh young master misunderstands. This one is only a poor doctor. This is..." Gu Beiyue couldn't help but laugh. Gu looked doubtful. "What do you mean?" "Seventh young master, this is the East Qin Crown Prince's territory," Gu Beiyue said. In a flash, Gu's entire body seemed to stiffen. Only his eyes could move, and he rolled them around like a marionette. Wasn't it enough to be attacked twice in a day? Both attacks came from the same person. Long Fei Yi. Gu gritted his teeth. A complicated look flickered past Gu Beiyue's eyes. He didn't know whether to joke or not, but said seriously, "Seventh young master, I can't guarantee anything else. But I, Gu Beiyue, can guarantee with my life that Long Fei Yi isn't using the princess." Was Gu Beiyue trying to coax peace? Perhaps Gu Qishao and Long Fei were born to be incompatible, because he only laughed coldly and didn't reply. There must be an inside story behind Kangon Private Bank and Myriad Merchant Hall's cooperation. If you ask here, it'll definitely be truer than what you found at Myriad Merchant Hall. Gu Beiyue explained. Long Fei Yi wouldn't lie to me. Moreover, I have to let Long Fei Yi know as soon as possible that Bai Yanqing has no more bargaining chips in his hands. Gu's face was still gloomy, but he still followed Gu Beiyue towards the East Origin Hall's Council of Elders. On the way, he didn't spare a glance at East Origin Hall and discovered that it was even more luxurious than Myriad Merchant Hall. Although he didn't want to admit it, he had to. Long Fei Yi was Cloud Realm Continent's richest man. Soon enough, they ran into a guard. Gu Beiyue immediately told him to send word that he wanted to see the head elder. Who knew that not long after the attendant left, a familiar figure would run towards them? Tang Li. Gu narrowed his eyes. You brat, you won quite a bit of money at 1,000 Gold Pavilion. Tang Li looked Gu Beiyue up and down, at a loss for words. In the end, he blurted out, Dr. Gu, my big bro misses you every day. Gu Beiyue gave a start, but Gu only laughed out loud. He, Gu Beiyue, Long Fei Yi treats you with deep affection. Tang Li realized he'd said the wrong thing in his excitement. He was about to explain when Gu Beiyue smiled. Tang Clan head, I wonder where the East Qin Crown Prince is right now. Did he receive the secret letter I sent him? And also, why is Kangon Private Bank cooperating with Myriad Merchant Hall? Gu Beiyue's questions were all critical. Tang Li immediately told him everything that had happened recently. Gu Beiyue listened attentively from beginning to end, while Gu Qixiao's face was a myriad of colors that kept changing. When he heard about the hostages, pain flashed through his eyes. When he heard that Ning Qing had been kidnapped, he fell into deep thought. And when he heard that Han Yunxi had used less than 10 days to resolve the crisis in Myriad Merchant Hall's gambling house and auction house and take control of Myriad Merchant Hall's Council of Elders, he smiled bitterly. There was nothing he could do, everything was explained clearly. Han Yunxi had already made her choice and was fighting side by side with Long Fei Yi. What else did he have to fight for? Actually, he hadn't lost to Long Fei Yi, but to Han Yunxi. As long as he was willing, with his immortal body, he could single-handedly fight against all forces and obtain everything. As long as she was willing, he could give her anything. Unfortunately, she wasn't willing. Han Yunxi could overlook such a deep national enmity. Even if they were to meet on the battlefield, Han Yunxi would still choose Long Fei Yi. Just how much did his poison last like Long Fei? His original hot-bloodedness seemed to have been extinguished by cold water. Gu shrugged and smiled. He didn't seem to be dispirited. He was still frivolous and did things his own way. Under Tang Li and Gu Beiyue's gaze, he smiled and said nonchalantly, as long as Poison Girl likes it. He turned to leave after he finished speaking, but Gu Beiyue quickly stopped him. Where are you going? To help Poison Girl find medicine. Fractures hurt a lot, Gu said calmly. Just a moment ago, he had been so full of himself, wanting to conquer the world for her. Now, he couldn't care less about anything other than the small matter of her wound hurting. Gu Beiyue suddenly realized that his previous worries were somewhat laughable. Looking at Gu's back, he suddenly felt that his heart was no longer as lonely as before. Shao Qi, do you know that I love her too? The seventh young master had already walked far away when Tang Li suddenly remembered something and shouted anxiously, Gu, Mu Ling'er has been kidnapped. She and Ning Jing have been kidnapped in Myriad Merchant Hall. He had been too excited just now and had been talking about his brother and sister-in-law. He had actually forgotten about this. Gu stopped abruptly. He finally remembered that he had left Mu Ling'er behind in Myriad Merchant Hall. He turned around and asked, who did it? Tang Li named the suspect. He had come to East Origin Hall today to dispatch men to help track down Deacon Jean and Uncle Chang's whereabouts. Gu Beiyue made a prompt decision. 7th young master, stay behind and help Tangli. I'll go to 100 Poison Sect. The princess leg has been recovering for so long. She'll be fine after a few rounds of acupuncture. Leave it to me. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.